Okay, we are live. Oh, I can hear myself back for some reason. Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you, Lloyd. Hi everyone, and welcome back to Holy Humanist. We are here for part two of what we discussed last week in terms of the pagan origins of Islam in southern Arabia. And as last week, and as promised, we have Lloyd de Young back with us. So again, a massive, massive, massive pleasure for us to have him here and share his knowledge with us. And guys, basically, today, before we do get started, we just want to touch on a couple of things. So I understand I do have mods on this channel, but even before I kind of go into that, so this channel, Holy Humanist, was, if you look in the About section of the channel, this channel is solely dedicated to looking at Islam and understanding it for what it actually is and the genuine threat it is, the oppressive system that it is for women and children, the way it glorifies war, and those kind of things. So everything Islam and human rights related, and everything that comes within the scope of that. This channel does not promote any other religion, and this channel also does not go out of its way to bash any other religion. So if I have gone to the trouble to find a guest who so graciously is willing to kind of come onto this platform, even though Lloyd and I don't necessarily come from the same worldview, we both can see that there is a very fundamental threat that Islam brings with it, and that manifests whenever Islam is in a place of dominance and power. So given Lloyd's background and given everything that he's kind of seen in his life, and therefore his findings of Islam from deep, deep in sources that you and I probably have never heard of, and me as a lay ex-Muslim are joining forces to kind of uncover what damage Islam can possibly do. So we're like, having said that, that's the main topic, and that's the purpose of these presentations, and for Lloyd to so kindly share, his thesis of what's happening in southern Arabia and how that lent itself towards Islam for us. So I'd really appreciate it, guys and girls, whoever's watching in the chat. Please make sure that the chat sticks to the topic at hand and nobody goes on to attacking anybody else's worldview other than the topic at hand here. So if Lloyd has so graciously decided to come on here, there is no point trying to send comments and saying, things about Lloyd to look into Christianity and things like that. That is not what is being discussed here. So I'd really appreciate it if you do see any of that funny business going on in the comments, please do nip it in the bud. Some people who are here who are my regulars, Ray, the producer as well, welcome. If you're here and you can be a mod for the duration of this, I'd really appreciate it. Zagros as well, you're here. So if you guys could just help me keep an eye on the chat and make sure it's not stirred to hateful comments and taking away from the whole motive behind this presentation. But yeah, that's just a little disclaimer and a bit of insight into why we're doing what we're doing and the way we've teamed up like this, and the fact that Lloyd understands what this channel is and has still gone out of his way to come on and present this information. And I think we all need to respect that. So yeah, Lloyd, do you have any comments on that? And before we start?
Oh no, much appreciated. Thank you. I'm just really glad to be on the channel with you. I really enjoyed the first one. It was really stimulating discussion, and you're a really good host and a very sharp mind. So I look forward to the interaction on this one again.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So everybody, we're going to kind of go with the same kind of format as last week. So if you have any questions as we're talking about certain things, feel free to send them our way, and we'll try and address them as we're on that slide or as Lloyd is in the middle of presenting that information. Ray, thank you so much. You're an absolute legend. I will make you a mod right now from my phone. And hi everyone. I don't want us to get carried away, but thank you all so much for being here. Music Guy, you're an amazing mod. If you could also keep an eye on the chat today, please. Let's keep the topic on hand, guys and girls, and let's keep it clean, and let's keep it respectful, and focus on literally tearing Islam apart bit by bit. So yeah, Lloyd, the floor is yours, and I'll just sort out my mods in the meantime.
Right. So thanks everyone for being here. And for those of you who missed the last one, it would help to watch the first episode. That gives us a good foundation into early Islamic history. Let me share my screen, and then I can
Sure.
just do a very quick overview of what we are going to be discussing. So we're looking at the very early history of Arabia. We're focusing on the south in Yemen and Ethiopia. Most of the focus is in Yemen with its ties to Islam, and also we're going to be looking at how these areas are connected to places like Babylon, uh, because the entirety of Arabia, including places like Greece and Rome and so on, pagan Greece, pagan Rome, all shared a very similar, if not the same, pantheon of gods, of pagan gods. Arabia was no different, and it shared that same pantheon with Babylon. And this is part of what I believe is the foundation of Proto Islam. And we've been looking through the evidence on that. So, very briefly, we're going to be looking at archaeology, history, language, as well as the Islamic sources. Christianity was a very early arrival in Arabia, much earlier than anticipated, so there's an influence with that. However, along with Christianity was Gnosticism and various heresies, which also play into Islam, because you can see the Christology, or the concept of Christ within Islam, within the Quran, is very much heretical, very much Gnostic. Within Islamic law, the Sharia and the fiqh explicitly states that Islam is a Gnostic religion. Uh, so Proto-Islam is based on pagan moon god worship, and the symbol of this pagan moon god was the crescent and star. You'll see one in every mosque these days. And we also are going to be discussing the Arabian pagan god called Makkah. Right. So yeah, so that's, I think that gives us just a brief update on that. Well, there'll be more, but let's continue where we left off last time. Anything you'd like
Awesome.
to add before we go on?
No, that's great. I just did you say today we're going to also cover where the Sharia implies that Islam has Gnostic
Uh,
foundations, or is that
I can
later
if you
on?
want. I can show you some of the references within the Sharia. Certainly, I can do that.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't come up, it's okay, but I'd love to delve into that at some point for sure.
Well, since I've said it, let's do that now then. So, okay, very short then. So, everyone, the Sharia is the will of Allah, the law of Allah, but also the law of Muhammad. We did cover some of the Sharia last week. We discussed that Sharia applies not only to Muslims, also to non-Muslims, and that the punishment for insulting Muhammad is death. I think we went through that in some detail.
Yeah,
We went through about 5 pages of the legal rulings on that. All of them explicitly said death. And if we'd continued for another 20 pages, we would have seen that theme repeated ad nauseum. But I
right.
think we made our point. This book is the most common, the most popular, and the most available, the most read Islamic law manual in the world. This is from the Shafi'i school. However, the schools all share roughly 75 to 80% of their rulings are identical. The one-fifth or so where they differ, these are things that are not fundamental to the religion. They don't affect the doctrine. These are merely cosmetic. Okay, this is called
Mhm.
Reliance of the Traveler. So I said this is the most popular Islamic law manual in the world. For instance, this is some of the. So have a look here. We've got marriage, 506. So there's like 50 pages on marriage, divorce. If you look at things like prayer, sorry, you'll see 120 pages of information on prayer, how to pray.
Wow.
You'll notice the Quran does not contain, for instance, the 5 daily prayers,
Yeah.
nor does it teach you how to pray. Well, this book will teach you everything you wanted to know about prayer and were afraid to ask. Okay, let's go, for instance, let me think, the prayer. So let's go to,
I would love to read that chapter on marriage and divorce, actually.
oh
I
no,
think
it's,
I'll
it's quite interesting. So let me just run ahead. There's something I'll show you about prayer.
Mhm.
For instance, ISIS. People say ISIS is not Islamic, right? That they're extremists. Well, um, I did cover that last week, and I will try to touch on that since you've asked. But they are they effectively, there's a range of permissible worship within Islam called rukhsa and azima. The differences between the four schools of fiqh that is encapsulated in a doctrine called ikhtilaf, just meaning
Mhm.
difference, right? And this was harmonized by a scholar called Ash-Shar'ani in his book, The Mizan al-Kubra, The Great Balance of the Supreme Scales. And there's a range of worship that is permissible within Islam. So you have this loose worship, right, called rukhsa, and there's very strict worship called azima. Um, ISIS, for instance, is strict. They are following Islam according to the doctrine of Azima. The only place that they differ from Orthodox Islam, where they break what's called the ijma, the orthodoxy, is that they have abolished rukhsa. That's really the
Okay.
only thing that they have, that they differ. Otherwise, their doctrine is standard Sunni Orthodox Islam. right?
Right.
Notice it states here. So notice ISIS would behead anyone who did not pray, who did not come and pray the prayers. This was common. There were apparently baskets of heads all over the place because it states here in the Islamic law under strict Islam. So if the Sharia is implemented in full, if they take over and they implement the Sharia, a Muslim who holds the prayer to be obligatory, but through lack of concern neglects to perform it until its proper time, has not committed unbelief. That's a relief. Rather,
Yeah.
he is executed, washed, prayed over, and buried in the cemetery.
Wow. Okay. That changed very quickly, very, very quickly. So
Yeah,
this is
ISIS
so even
did this
even in
to
a
the
state
letter.
now like in Afghanistan, for example, this is
Mm.
what this is the manual that they'd be operating with, right? As an Islamic state.
Yeah, they are Deobandis, most like, well, the bulk of them are Deobandis. So it's going to be very similar because of the
Very
ijma.
similar. Okay.
That's the consensus between the four schools. ISIS was killing people who missed a prayer. This was
Mm.
standard practice. And this is
Yeah.
why. This is, for instance, um, there's another reference I want to find. There's a lot of information on the prayer here. No, I wasn't planning to do this. Okay, so something called the Sutra. It is recommended to put a barrier at least 32 centimeters high in front of oneself when performing the Islamic prayer. Okay, fine. Let's have a look at what else it has to say. If someone tries to pass between oneself and the barrier, it is recommended to gently push him back. If he persists, if you are blocking the way, if you are praying, but your body is blocking a path, and someone tries to walk past, you may push him back as hard as necessary, as you would an attacker. If the person trying to go past were to die, you would not be subject to retaliation or have to pay indemnity to the kin.
Oh, this is insane. I mean, this is the religion of peace for you. And I mean, I know this is like the intense actual like basis behind it, but that's why when people do, like even in the West, for example, when they do just think that they can put up their prayer mat in the middle of the road or on a sidewalk, and they do it with such conviction because it doesn't matter what the consequences are. It's your prayer at that time, and this is, as you're saying, like when you don't have that in barrier anyway, a lot of Muslims put something there to make this imaginary barrier. So anybody that's walking past doesn't like disrupt your prayer. But this concept of having a barrier and nothing come between it is so important.
Yeah, so you can kill someone while praying and you have absolutely no guilt or fault
Uh,
assigned to
y-
you.
yeah, literally. No, not one would not be subject to retaliation or have to pay an indemnity to his kin. So if this person was to die as a result of your push, which is an intentional push with intent to keep your prayer going with this, and death in like as happens as a result, you walk scot free.
Yeah, under the Sharia. Now, look, obviously, you might do this today in London. You'll obviously go to jail. You might do so in,
Exactly.
for argument's sake, in an Islamic country, but that is only because Sharia is not yet fully implemented.
Yeah.
Once it is, under the Taliban, under ISIS, this is what is legal.
Agreed.
This then becomes the law. Okay,
Thunderous
so
one, hello and welcome. Yeah, it's good to have you here. I'm excited for our chat tomorrow as well.
yeah, welcome, Thunders. So let me have a quick look here. So, looking within the manual. Now, this is one manual. Understand, no single Islamic law manual contains everything. Often there are specialized manuals, one on marriage, one on prayer, one on fasting. They'll have a little bit of everything. The largest and most complete, to my knowledge, is the Hidayah in the Hanafi school of fiqh. This manual is special though. This one has a little bit of everything. It is a single volume that compiles a little bit of everything. It compares with other schools and it has the most sound rulings of those schools presented for you as a compendium. So there's no other Sharia manual like this in the world that I know of. So I've looked up the word Gnos, Gnos. We have Gnosis mentioned 18 times, Gnostic 5 times, Gnostics plural 3 times, and Gnostics with an apostrophe 1 time. So that's more than 20 references, almost 30 references. So, for instance, if you're looking at Gnosis within Islam, he writes, the Sheikh al-Akbar writes, there's the spirit, there is the spiritual station of annihilation in Gnostic vision. In other words, there are multiple spiritual stations. So this is a part of a ritual series of incantations and exercises you do to free yourself from your physical mind and body and to enter into the throne room of Allah. So
Wow,
it's a
okay.
series of occult magical practices so that you can have Gnostic vision. That's okay.
So this is like
Um,
Islam's version of like almost like transcendental meditation to get the union with God, if you will.
they
Oh,
claim so the Islamic scholars claim that they have the true gnosis, that everyone who came before was just lost or faking it or didn't find the truth. These guys have the true knowledge, the gnosis, and this is in the classical sense of what we know as the gnosis from the Gnostics,
okay.
right? So they speak of the harm of stopping at the first traces of gnosis. You have to push through, right? So others claim to have attained to gnosis and contemplative knowledge of the divine, to have passed through spiritual stations and states, and to have reached nearness to Allah. Others have, but those guys are faking it. We as the Islamic scholars, we as the Muslims, we've really reached it. Our hearts are aflame with the love of Allah Most High, and we have attained to gnosis. We found the true path. So the true
Okay.
knowledge, knowledge of the Gnostics, we have found it.
So not Buddha, not anybody else, they found the real truth.
Correct. Okay, but this is a longer story, but uh, let me do a very short summary then. So Islam has 4 levels and 2 divisions. The 2 divisions are the Sharia, which is the law, which is to obey the law, right? It's illegal. That's really just a legal issue. Just do what you're told. Then the other side of it is called the Hakika, the knowledge, which is knowing the truth,
Hmm.
right? So you as a lay Muslim, you follow the Sharia, you do what you're told, but you're also at the bottom of the stack. Now the other side, the Hakika, this is only open to the most highly knowledgeable, most highly spiritual of the Islamic imams. Those imams all happen to be the Sufis. So the highest level of development within Islam is specific and exclusive to the Sufis. Now, then you've got 4 levels of knowledge, right? And notice all the saints in Islam are all Sufis,
Yeah, true.
right? When they speak of saints in Islam, they're all Sufis. So your lowest level of knowledge in Islam, the very lowest level, and don't forget, the Quran is at this level. So the Quran is the lowest level of knowledge. So are the Hadith at this level. It's called the you have the Ibara, which is the lowest literal level. Then you have the Ishara, the level of the Imams. Then you have the Lataif, and then you have the Akaik, right? So you have the 4 levels. So the
Okay.
Ibada is where the lay Muslim is, where he simply just knows the literal meaning and he obeys. Then your Imams have what they call the allusions, what is implied, what is not necessarily stated. Then the Lataif is the understanding of the hidden reality, right?
Okay.
This is an understanding of the subtle truths, but you have to have this training and this all transcendental meditation, as you say, to understand that. And the final level is the Akaik. These last 2 levels are only open to the Sufis and to the saints. So they effectively become as as gifted as the prophets. They become like the prophets, and then they are open to the secrets of Allah. They then achieve the secret knowledge. So they speak of the Gnostic in his first states, is affected by the impact, right? And they speak of the Gnostic's spiritual will exalted above all else because they are Gnostics. His spiritual will is exalted above all else, right? And then they speak here of someone who has reached the level of those to whom the unseen is exposed, the ghaib is exposed. And
Yeah,
we
so the
have
veil, they can
Gnostic,
see beyond that veil that most of us are not
correct.
privy to. Right.
Yes. The ghaib is mentioned 15 or 16 times in the Quran, and it refers to the occult, the unseen, right? We have Gnostic insight. They have special knowledge. You enter through the door of Gnosis, which is the secret knowledge, right? So they have what they worship. Okay, let me finish this since we're on the Sharia. So to worship in Islam, there are different levels of worship, right? But the minimum that is required, so it says here, the perfection of faith, which is called ihsan, the perfection of faith is to adore Allah as if you see Him. And if you see Him not, He nevertheless sees you. Fine and well.
That's the
Okay.
omniscience. Yeah.
But now, so scholars mention that there are 3 spiritual stations a servant may have in his worship. Okay.
Hmm.
So, one, you have to worship in a way that fulfills the obligations of Islam by observing all its conditions and integrals. These are legal conditions. These are rules, right?
Yeah.
This is part of the
Actual
law.
rules. Yeah.
Right? So one, you must also, and then secondly, to do this while immersed in the sea of Gnostic inspiration, the secret knowledge, the gnosis, the mukashafa, right? And then thirdly, to worship as mentioned above. Okay, though aware. Okay, well, let's just. Okay, then they mention to worship as mentioned above, the mainly way that Allah sees one. Okay, so you eventually you get into direct contact with Allah. This is a summary, right? All
Mhm.
three of these are of the perfection of faith, ihsan, but the perfection required for the validity of worship is only the first. In other words, just follow the rules, do as you are told, obey.
Yeah.
Perfection in the latter senses is the mark of the elect and not possible for many.
Wow. Okay. So
This is
that's just
only for
confirming
the
that
elite.
hidden knowledge amongst the highest Sufi level.
Correct.
Okay, so Lloyd, a couple of things because this is really fascinating for me as well, especially coming from. So just so I've understood this correctly, so people like me who were just once upon a time a normal, supposedly believing Muslim, right, who was born into it and accepted it as the truth. I form part of the Ibara. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I am therefore allowed access to the Quran and the
And
Sunnah,
some
right?
hadith.
And some hadith,
Some
right?
hadith. And the tafsir is only allowed to you in the company of an imam who will interpret it for you.
Right, exactly. That's why the Muslim emphasis is always on like, well, we don't know, the scholars know, the Imam knows. I can't literally they are like, this is
Have you asked
beyond
a
my
scholar?
yeah.
Have you
No, I
consulted a scholar?
yeah, exactly. That's literally their go-to. But so that's really interesting because what so from where I'm standing, I thought, and this is because I might be very ignorant in this, but I literally thought, for example, living in Saudi and seeing like Wahhabi Saudi, like Islam play out there, and there's a huge concept there where even the monarchy is not above the ulema, right? The religious elite, the ruling scholars. But then, in my understanding, Sufism, like they completely shun away from the idea of saints and like even saint worship or following the methods that the saints used. And so Sufism branched off entirely. But according to this like chain of command that you're saying almost, the top of those like scholarly circles are in fact Sufis essentially as like Freemasons of some kind or
Yeah.
a
They claim to be
Gnostics.
the Sufis do claim to be the original Freemasons, and they claim to have founded Freemasonry in Europe.
Oh, okay. Wow. So I need to look into like how Sufism still manifests itself then. So are these scholars at the top then, would it be right to say that they are heavily influenced by Sufism, but that just doesn't trickle down and we don't see it? Or
Look, you need to understand that Sharia is technically a secret.
okay.
Okay? I have for 2 years now, more than 2 years, every single person who ever replies to me, who comments to me on my channel, any channel, whatever, I ask them, come with me live. Let us simply read through the Sharia together. We'll take a handful of fiqh manuals and we'll just read them. We'll read on apostasy, on whether or not it's legal to marry little girls or have sex with little children,
Yeah.
prepubescent sex. Let's read through the law. What do your imams say? What's in the ijma? What do Hanafi, Shafi, Maliki, Hanbali, what do they say? I have not had one person accept, not one, because it's illegal. For a Muslim to talk about the Sharia would be to reveal a weakness and a secret of Islam, and it would be treason, and that is punishable by death.
Wow, okay, yeah. And just because you mentioned the word treason there as well, when I actually looked into the word for apostasy or irtida in Arabic is like actually akin to the word treason. So even the act of leaving Islam is like akin to treason, which just
Treason.
really emphasized for me the political nature of Islam as opposed to it being like a religious spiritualistic belief system.
That's very good. Actually, I'm going to look up that word in a minute in the Encyclopedia of Islam, but notice the word dawah, right? So what happens is because we're Westerners, we understand the world in a certain way. We have certain definitions. Hey, Thunderous, welcome, man. So what happens is we see things through our perspective, our Western lens, right? However, they have a completely different meaning of that word. So the word dawah, we think of it as evangelization. It has nothing to do with evangelization. It is a completely
Okay.
different concept. Dawah is an entirely secular word. Yes, it can mean call. It can mean invitation. Let me show an example of dawah. Hey, Thunderous, do you want to come over and have a beer tomorrow night and get drunk? I'm gonna fry some steaks. Come on over. Let's have a couple of beers and just get sloshed. What do you say, buddy? That's dawah. That's a call. That's an invitation. That is not an evangelization. That's an entirely secular usage of the word.
Right.
Properly speaking, dawah means propaganda. and it means pretension, to pretend. Okay? Dawah is propaganda for a member of the Prophet's family and propaganda for the Imam. If you look
Yeah.
at if you go into the Encyclopedia of Islam and you look up the usage of dawah, it is propaganda. It is state propaganda.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we see. Okay, so do these Dawa, I mean, does the Dawa community, would they know these trade secrets and understand exactly the root of the way that they are
Probably
using
not.
Dawa and the way they're selling it to Western minds?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
No. So
Marcus here has made a really good point, just saying, so it's much like cults and secret societies. There are hidden tiers of understanding, and they strictly gatekeep it.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Qasim saying that was a great interpretation of Dawa.
Okay. Yeah. So hopefully does answer your question. We can get back to the presentation. But if you have
Yes,
questions,
yes,
please
thank
ask.
you. No, that's fine. I just, as soon as you said it, I really had to kind of see for myself the link to Gnosticism or even just the reference and mention of it within the Islamic Sharia or fiqh. So thank you for that. That was very eye-opening.
Okay, so this is where I ended off last week. So I'm just going to go back one slide just to recap where we left off. Muslims like to say that the crescent and star symbol originated in Turkey in 1843, technically. However, let's go to Turkey here on the left-hand side to the 1st century and prior to the 1st century, and we'll see that the crescent and star was utilized by the pagans in that part of the world, the Babylonian pagans in that part of the world pre the 1st century.
Yeah,
So this has been in use for a long time. Here's other usages of it. This is a pagan Byzantine coin. This is not from the Roman Christian Byzantines. This is pagan Byzantine. So Muslims argue that the popular symbol of Islam was made popular during the Ottoman Islamic Empire in the mid 1800s. Others state it is the pre-Islamic pagan deity, a moon god. Right now, religious symbols are historically and theologically significant. So the cross is linked to the crucifixion of Christ. So it has a historical as well as a theological significance within Christianity. Thus, it's logical that the crescent moon should have a historical and theological meaning for Islam.
true.
So Islam claims to be the original true monotheistic religion of Abraham. And we're going to be looking into the religion of Abraham today. We'll be looking at the history, at least the narrative of Abraham from the Bible and so on.
Okay.
So associated with Abraham, we have the religion called the Hanif, right? Hanifan. So Hanif, plural, Hunafa. In Islamic writings, one who follows the original and true monotheistic religion. In the Quran, Hanif is used especially of Abraham. Later Islamic usage occasionally uses Hanif as the equivalent of Muslim. And Hanafiya is the religion of Abraham or Islam.
Okay, so they've already equated the religion of Abraham with Islam by using that use of that word.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that. So we'll be focusing on that for a little while. So Hanif, right? Arabic, this is the Arabic word, the Hebrew word. So it's a Hebrew word. Now we realize, hold on, it actually comes from the Hebrew. It's an Arabic masculine name meaning righteous person or true believer. It is generally agreed that Hanif is derived from the Syriac word Hanpe, meaning heathen or pagan, also meaning heretic.
Right.
Zagros, that's a good one.
Yeah, that
You
cracked
just
me
won
up.
the internet today.
You did, Zagros. That was brilliant.
Yeah, you won the internet. Someone asked if I would collaborate with some of the other guys. I think that was you who asked if I would speak on other channels. I mean, if they reach out to me, I can certainly, I consider it. Yeah, sure. I mean, if it's of value to them, then certainly. But so Muslims claim that Muhammad's religion goes back before Judaism and before Christianity, before the Christians and the Jews went astray. And before the laws of Moses, though, we had the 7 laws of Noah. Now, the 7 laws of Noah are the basis for the 10 commandments. So
Right.
5 of the 7 laws of Noah are word for word within the 10 commandments, right? So half of the 7 laws of Noah are in the 10 commandments. Now, what's interesting is that as we go forward, we'll see that they actually make reference to the Hanifa, and they actually make reference to these laws of Noah, which they claim are not part of. So, and you'll see, so the Muslims clearly either deliberately or out of ignorance got this entirely wrong. But we're going to look at what is the original religion of Abraham and where all this went skew. So just briefly, Hanifa is usually translated in the English translations as uprightness, to be upright. Okay, Hanifan does not mean uprightness; it means pagan, it means heathen, and the Christians and the Jews use it in the context of heretic.
Okay.
Right, so it meant heathen, pagan, or heretic. Here is Quran 10:105. Okay, this is Quran.com, and you'll see here this is the term: and be steadfast in faith in all uprightness, and do not be one of the polytheists. Here's the term. It translates on Quran.com as upright. Okay, let's have a listen here. So, can you guys hear that?
I can it's very low
Okay,
though.
no, so I'm not sharing. So I'm actually then, okay, so hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah,
I'm going to
sure.
play this for you because it's actually in the Quran. So I'm going to grab this and I will go there myself.
Sure. Thomas Anderson is saying Abu Hanifa therefore equals Abu Upright.
Fair enough. That would be accurate. So let me tell you what. Let me stop sharing and then share with my video, with my audio. I'm going to
Sure.
share screen, share system audio. Okay, there we go. I'm now sharing system audio. Hopefully you guys can hear this. This is Quran.com 10:105, and you'll see here that Allah is speaking that they need to be one of the Hanifan. Allah is Hanifan.
حنيفا حنيفا حنيفا.
Okay, so understand Islam is Hanifan. Allah is Hanifan. All right. So now the root, the triliteral root of Hanifan is HNF for pagan, right? So in the non-Islamic sources, we have the following. So the Jewish Midrashic literature, the root HNF is associated with heretics called the Manim. You'll notice one of the very first names for Muslims was the Mu'minin. Actually, let me just do this. So one of the very earliest names of Muslims was the Mu'minin. Right?
Wow, okay,
Now,
yeah.
what is interesting is, sorry, my typing is really bad. Here. Within the Jewish text, though, a heretic or a heathen was a ha-manim. In Arabic, it's the mu'minin. Right? Mu'minin just means believers, but we'll get into all of that as we go. So it's associated with heretics, and in the Syriac documents, Hanpa or Hanpe denotes non-Christian pagans. So in other words, these would have been somehow pseudo-biblical believers, but they were not properly orthodox, therefore they were heretics.
Yeah. And it's interesting that the actual Christians themselves considered them pagans and heretics.
Yes. Yeah, they considered them pagan heretics, right? So now the Christians and Jews said, look, you guys are Hanifan. They were calling these people Hanifan, pagans and heretics. Whereas the people that were directing it at, they said, yes, we are.
Okay, they just accepted it, yeah.
Either they took it on or they didn't know what it meant. And they thought that we are following the right religion, so this is the name of that religion. They thought the Christians and the Jews were telling them the name of the religion, right? That they are following. And they thought it was the correct religion before Judaism, before Christianity. So Christian apologists of the Abbasid period retained the pagan sense of the term, and they applied it to the Muslims. They wanted to demonstrate the derogatory name, right? The meaning of the word by which Muslims called themselves. That's in the book Griffith the Prophet. The pagan sense of the term was known to Muslim writers. They applied the title Hunafa to pagans such as the Sabiyun. That's the Sabians from the north, right? In Harania, the Sabians, known today as the Mandaeans, they are Gnostics. Remember, they hate Jesus. They revere John the Baptist, and their prophet is Enoch. Right?
Okay.
So
that's actually where I wanted to just allude to the Quranic reference and just check with you that these are the same ones being discussed, because they are actually lumped in there with Jews and Christians.
People of the book.
Yeah. Do you want me to pull that reference up real quick?
Sure, by all means, if you want to go ahead, please.
Okay, sure. Just here, just to check. So, can you see this here? Here we go. We can take. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you had it.
Here.
Just there is, yeah.
So indeed, those who have believed, and those who are Jews, and the Sabians, and the Christians, and the, how do you say that? Magians?
The Magians. The Persians, the Magians.
Okay, and those who
Zoroastrians.
Oh, right. Okay. So here they're talking about Jews, Sabians, Christians, and Zoroastrians, and those who are associated with Allah. Allah will judge between them on the day of resurrection. So here they're kind of casting them all off, from my understanding. There's two other references to them. But I didn't want to disrupt your presentation too much. But that's when you're talking about the people you're talking about now, that's the ones that are being referenced there. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, so let me go here, search.
And it's the exact same reference to them in the Hadith as well when they are referred to.
So there's a little bit of confusion here within the Hadith. So since you brought it up, so no, wrong reference. I wanted a different one. Get at this Sabi. Here we go. So let's go to Da'if Bukhari, Volume 1, Book 7, Hadith 340, right? So notice. Okay. She asked where. They said to Allah's messenger. She said, do you mean the man who is called the Sabi with a new religion? They replied, yes. So come along. They brought her to Muhammad, who was called a Sabi.
Okay, so
Two
Muhammad.
men met him and took me to the man who is called the Sabi.
Sabi. Very
Now, the word
interesting.
Sa means the one who has deserted his old religion and embraced a new religion. The Sabis are a sect of the people of the scripture who recite the book of Psalms. Now, the Sabaeans, to my knowledge, will utilize the book of Psalms, but they are not Christians. They're heretics. They are Hanif.
Yeah.
Right? And also notice the Sabi. Now, the problem is that the term that is used here in the Arabic, I checked with someone who speaks Arabic, is Sabah, which you don't know whether they mean the Sabaeans or the Sabians. It's very vague. But it states here that Muhammad is either a Gnostic Sabian or a Yemeni moon god worshipping Sabaean.
Right.
In this case, it looks like he's a Sabian here, which is a Gnostic. Sorry.
Okay.
I clicked on something. Yeah.
And so they obviously we can associate the scripture of the Psalms with them, right? You would.
Yeah. So
okay,
they
so under the category
pick and choose to
so under the Quranic reference of people of the book, you could see how they could fall into that category.
Yeah, because they were loosely sort of vaguely Christian, but don't forget Gnosticism is pseudo biblical.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
So although Gnosticism is very much derogatory towards Jews and also very much anti-Christian, so they're definitely not on the same page. Now, the pagan sense of the term was known to Muslim writers, and Yaqubi describes as Hanifs the pagans who worship the stars in Saul and David's times. So pagan moon worshippers are recognized by even Muslims as being Hanifs, which is the same context that the Christians and the Jews were using it in and directing it at the Muslims.
Yeah, exactly. So it really does seem like then they either, as you said, didn't know, or they accepted it and said, yes, we are.
No. So they thought, that if the shoe fits. Now, Hanif is used of Abraham as pure worship of Allah, contrasted with idolaters known as the mushrikun. Okay? It asserts that Abraham was neither Jew nor Christian, so they reject both of those religions, and that the people of the book were originally commanded to worship God as Hunafa. And you saw in Quran 10:105, Hanifa, right? You heard. Right?
Yeah.
Not as idolaters or polytheists. So this is something that is within the Quran itself, spoken by Allah. Now, the people of the book, or the Al-Kitab, the people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, later the Sabaeans. Now, the question is, do they mean the Sabians or the Sabaeans? That's the
$1,000,000 question.
ambiguity here.
Yeah.
And the Zoroastrians, the Omegians, and even in India, the idolaters there were at some point included.
Wow.
Right. Now, Abraham is not a Jew, nor yet a Christian. In Quran 3:67, he was true in faith and he bowed his world to Allah's, which is Islam. Okay? So not Jew, not Christian, but he was a Hanif, right? So they say, become Jews or Christians if you would be guided to salvation, but say thou, nay, I follow the religion of Abraham. Okay? So let's have a look at this. We need to start looking at what is this religion of Abraham. So Hanafiya is contrasted with polytheism and the corrupted monotheism of Jews and Christians. So Mo's claim was that Abraham was righteous before Judaism was founded.
Correct. Yeah.
Now, evidence does, we do have plenty of evidence to show that for a time, the term Hanafiya was the name for Muhammad's religion. Okay. Now, oddly enough, so first there was a Hanafiya, right? So first you had the Hanafiya, then they became the Mu'minin, then there were the Muhajirun. Only
Mhm.
much later did they become Muslims, and only much later did the term Islam become common. Prior to that, these were the names they used. Okay. Both of these, Hanafiya and Mu'minin, effectively mean pagans and heretics.
Yeah. And then Muhajirun means like immigrant, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So Abraham was a Hanif Muslim. So technical use of Muslim in Islam started at the end of 2 AH. Okay, I think it's the 2nd century AH. Okay, so Muslim and Islam are generally very late terms within Islam, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
True.
just my little sense of humor. Here. So moving on. So the word Hanif in Islamic literature. So Ibn Hisham uses Hanif as equivalent of Muslim, right? So Muslim today was a Hanif then. A Hanif then was, as we will see, a pagan moon worshipper.
Okay.
So the more frequent is the use of Hanafiya for the religion of Abraham. Okay, fine and well. And you have Tahannuf, which means the adoption of Islam. And Tahannuth is a derivative word meaning penance.
Oh,
Okay.
right. Okay.
So let's see in the Sirah. The Sirah is the Gospels of Muhammad. It's like the equivalent of the New Testament. They call it the biographies. It's really his Gospels.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick look. Salman the Persian told the apostle that his master in Amuria told him to go to a place in Syria. There was a man who lived between two thickets. And the sick used to stand in his way, and everyone he prayed for was healed. So this is a Christian monk who would heal people, do miracles. The people came to him with their sick, and everyone he prayed for was healed. And then he asked me who I was, blah, blah, blah. And I said, God have mercy on you. Tell me about the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. And he replied, you were asking about something men do not inquire of today, because that religion was starting to fade.
Yeah. Long
The
gone
time
by
has
then in
come
that
near when
way.
a prophet will be sent with this religion from the people of the Haram. Go to him, for he will bring you to it. Then he went into the thicket. The apostle said to Salman, if you have told me truth, you have just met Jesus, the son of Mary. So apparently now, in the earliest biographies, Jesus tells this guy, hey, there's this guy coming with this religion. You need to follow him.
Yeah.
So this is
And
just,
he's going to come from the people of the Haram.
yeah. Now understand that Harams go back into Yemen already, where they were
Yeah.
worshipping at those temples. That's the temple of like the Mahram Bilqis,
Yes.
right?
And
Which is the
Al-Makkah,
temple of
right?
Queen of
As
Sheba.
well.
Yeah. Sorry.
Al-Makkah as well, as you discussed last week, right?
Correct. Yes. Right. So let's have a look at further. So 4 men who broke with polytheism, again from the earliest of the biographies. Okay. So Ubaidullah, so he said, find yourselves a religion, for you have none. So they went their several ways in the land, seeking the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. Waraka attached himself to Christianity and studied the scriptures until he had thoroughly mastered them. Ubaidullah went searching till Islam came. Then he migrated to Abyssinia. Okay. And when he arrived there, he adopted Christianity and died a Christian in Abyssinia. Fantastic. Zayd had determined to leave Mecca to travel about in search of the Hanafiya, the religion of Abraham. So they were searching for this religion. Okay. Then he went forth searching for the religion of Abraham. And this man, it is alleged, was well instructed in Christianity. This is in Syria. And he asked him about the Hanafiya. And he said, you are seeking a religion to which no one today can guide you. Blah, blah. Same story as before. Okay. Now, Zayd had sampled Judaism and Christianity and was not satisfied with either of them. So a Christian is telling him it's not Christianity, it's not Judaism, it's another religion. So this Christian doesn't know what this religion is. Okay, fine and well. Now, before I go further, I'm just going to sort of generally, there's a lot of polemics within the Quran. It's a very polemical text. So let's have a look at how they will use words, confuse words, and alter words to suit them. All right. So you have Abram, the Ivri. So this comes from the Hebrew word, the Ivrit. In Islam, the same word is Ifrit. You have Ivrit, Ifrit, right? Abram, the Ivri, okay, known as Ivrit, which means the Hebrew, also means to cross over or from the other side, or a descendant, but it means to cross over the river is generally the accepted term, because Abraham crossed the river. Abraham received news that his cousin Lot had been taken away as a prisoner of war. A fugitive brought news to Abram the Hebrew. So in the Old Testament, he's known as Abraham the Hebrew, Abram HaIvri. Only later on does he become Abraham, right?
Right.
So in Genesis 13:14 and so on. Now, biblical scholars Nahum Sadna concludes that Hebrew was an ethnic designation, right? So by the time of King David, the term Hebrew had largely disappeared, and for most of recorded history, the descendants of Abraham the Hebrew were known as Jews. Fine and well. Now the term Chthonian, of all relating to the deities, the spirits and beings dwelling under the earth. In Greek mythology, Chthonian refers to beings that inhabit the underworld. Okay? Cthulhu, right? If you think of Cthulhu, right? Those are the demons that live under the ground, right? So if you look at the horror stories of H.P. Lovecraft, you have Cthulhu, Chthonian, right? So
Okay,
let's have
that's
a
where it
look at
comes
what
from.
they've done. Sorry?
That's where it derives from. Very interesting.
Right. Now, Ifrit, okay, is an epithet expressing power, cunning, and insubordination. Now, who do you think have power, are cunning, and are insubordinate to God? Well, the Jews, right? According to Islamic doctrine, this is the case.
Yeah.
And this occurs only once in the Quran in the sense of the rebellious. It's a class of particularly powerful Chthonian forces, demons who live under the ground. Formidable and cunning. In the popular tales, the Ifrit is a jinn of enormous size, formed basically of smoke. It has wings, haunts ruins, and lives under the ground. It's a demon. So they've taken the description of the Jews and they've demonized them quite literally.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Very, very much literally demonize them.
Right? So the Jews are demonized within within the Islamic vocabulary. So because they tend to twist words, but we'll speak more about that. Now I'm gonna deviate again just briefly and talk about how scriptures and how ideas are twisted and utilized by people who are anti that particular idea. So let's look at John 8:44. So Abraham wasn't a Christian or a Jew. Now this ties to early history within Christianity fighting against the Gnostics. Right? So the Gnostics hate the Jews. Right? Islam, you're required. So Muslims are required to bring the end times. Muslims must murder all of the Jews. They have to kill all the Jews, and then the end times will come. So it is. This is the law. This is Islamic doctrine.
Yeah.
Right.
And even stones and things will help the Muslims be able to trace where the Jews are, except for one tree which is on the side of the Jews.
Yes, the three garkad, which is the box
Yes.
thorn, which
Yes.
will.
That one will conceal the Jews from the Muslims.
All right. Yeah. So secular rarities came on. Thank you. So now let's have a look at how how the Bible has been twisted. This is an example, and then hopefully we can tie this back to you can get an understanding of where some of these influences come into Islam. So, for instance, Islam, there's a hatred of the Jews, and
Yeah.
within the Gnosticism, right, the various strands of Gnosticism, there's the very same thing. The source of that hatred is John 8:44 in the New Testament. The verse is, "You are of your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth." Now, this is the original. So Jesus is here, and look, this is not the opportunity to get stuck into a he said, she said on the meaning of this verse, right? But
Sure.
the accepted, yeah. Anyway, so Jesus was talking specifically to the Pharisees. Now, you'll get people who hate Jews, hate Christianity, hate the Bible. They'll say, well, Jesus was talking to all the Jews. Jesus was himself a Jew. His apostles were Jews, and, but fine. So Jesus is not talking specifically to these group of Pharisees, possibly the leaders, if I recall. Okay? And he's saying, you are of your father. You are following your father, the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. So he's speaking to that group. What happens is that the Gnostics come along and they reinterpret, just like Islam reinterprets everything, right?
Yeah.
So before Islam, you had the pseudo-biblical Gnostics who also reinterpreted the Bible. So John 8:44 is the source of their hostility to Jews and Christianity, claiming it is a pro-Gnostic verse. So the Gnostics have claimed throughout history this is a pro-Gnosticism verse, with Jesus affirming that the Jews serve the Gnostic Satan called Yaldabaoth. Right?
Okay.
So those who are anti-Semites make the same claims while generally ignorant of its historical source. So they seek to undermine the passage and legitimize their stance, their hatred of the Jews, just as Islam does, without understanding the original source of it. Okay? By asking if John 8:44 reads, "You are of your father the devil," or does it state, "You are of the father of the devil"?
Okay.
So they serve the father of the devil.
Right. Okay. Right? Yeah, as opposed to, you are of your father, the devil, or you are of the father of the devil, right? I see.
So who do the Jews serve? The
Semantics,
Jews serve Yahweh. This would mean the father of the devil is Yahweh, meaning Yahweh is Satan.
Yeah.
Understand that the God of the
Okay. Wow.
Bible, the God of the Old Testament, the God of the New Testament, according to this interpretation, is Satan.
Mm.
And the Jews serve the father of the devil, who is Yahweh. So then, by that token, Yahweh must be Satan, and therefore they can make up a new God, the monad. And in fact, in Islam, Allah conforms almost identically to the monad, to the Gnostic monad. You'll find there are certain overlaps, but that's for another time to go into that. Now, modern scholars do persist in this very same semantic game.
Mm.
Okay, so this is where that originally comes from.
Okay.
So the hatred of the Jews is
just to
derived from that verse.
clarify, in that pro-Gnostic interpretation, they are basically making Yahweh akin to the devil, pretty much, right?
Satan. Yeah, he's the father
Satan.
of Satan.
Yeah.
He's a greater evil than Satan. Yeah.
Okay, that's huge. Lloyd, sorry, just before we carry on, I'll just
Sure.
address this quick super chat. To be love, thank you so much. Ray, this one is for you. This is for producer Ray, my favorite guy and hero, most funny Trump impersonator. Cheers. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, To be love. Ray, that one is for you. Your ex-Muslim rap has taken off, and yeah. I wish, To be love, if you understand Urdu, you should check out Ray's stuff in Urdu, because he is just as funny, and the impersonations are hilarious of like Bollywood actors and stuff. So Ray is very multi-talented. But yeah, thank you for being here, Ray, and thank you, To be love. Stop Scamming Man is here as well. Thank you so much, Stop Scamming Man. Stop Scamming Man says, you can read translations of numerous Gnostic texts in Bart Ehrman's Lost Scriptures, published by Oxford. A good book on Zoroastrianism is Zoroastrians, their beliefs and practices, by Mary Boyce. Oh, okay, awesome. Thank you, Stop Scamming Man. I will definitely look into the Zoroastrian book as well, because I genuinely like interested in that, and everything that Lloyd is alluding to today when they are mentioned, and I know how like ancient their practices are as well. So I'll actually put this in the description as well, these two recommendations. But yeah, thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, so hopefully you have an idea now. So using this revisionist framework, Jesus is not a Jew,
Yeah.
right? And the God of the Old Testament of Abraham and Moses, that we call Yahweh, is now Satan. In fact, the father of Satan. So he's a greater evil, right?
Yeah.
So this is the original source. This is entirely a Gnostic source, because the Gnostics were trying to push their view of reality and obviously displace Christianity. So obviously Islam derives its belief from that Gnostic view. Obviously it's taken from many views, but let's continue. Let's look at Maimonides. He is considered the greatest sage within Judaism, right? Or one of its top 2 or 3 greatest sages, right? So he speaks of Abraham, the Sabaean. So it is well known, he writes, that the patriarch Abraham was brought up in the religion and opinion of the Sabaeans. Remember, the Sabaeans are the Yemenis, right? The Yemenis worship the moon god Al-Makkah, right? The moon god Makkah, right? The moon god Makkah was, thank you very much, Trevor, thank you.
And thank you, Mariam, as well. Thank you, guys.
Mariam, thank you. Appreciate it. So the moon god Makkah was also known as the Babylonian prime moon god Shin, or Sin, as we say, S-I-N, right? So now the thing is, the Sabaeans are down south in Yemen. Let's have a quick look at a map. So notice the Sabaeans are down here in Yemen. Okay, Abraham was up here in Turkey, in Haran, right? And you've got Mesopotamia here. This is Mesopotamia. Here's Syria, and then here's Turkey, southern Turkey. So understand, how does Abraham have the very same beliefs and follow the same God as this group down here? Well, obviously they had the same beliefs all across Arabia.
Yeah.
So,
and with various names, right? But essentially the same worship and practice, but the names, as you can see, like the same pantheon exists across the board as well in Arabia, but there are slight variations. Also, just to follow up on this, Marcus was saying, right, we also saw the moon symbolism from the Kaaba in North Yemen.
So
Farish Ahmed, thank you. If you're already subbed, we will also recognize that. Don't you worry.
appreciate it. I appreciate the support, guys. Thank you. So remember, we did discuss in the first episode that these Yemeni Sabians, right, their religion, according to this 9th or 10th century Islamic scholar, this historian, says that the modern Islamic practices we have today are effectively identical to the practices of those Sabaean Babylonian pagans. We discussed that. So So we've already discussed that. So in other words, you've got the very same religion in practice today, just called Islam rather than called this. Thank you,
So
Trevor.
what you're saying
So,
pretty much is you could literally just take the word Sabians away and put Islam there, and you'll pretty much
and
get a
you
mirror
pretty much
reflection
have
of current Islam.
Islam. Yeah, I mean that's what that
Wow.
scholar said, and that
Mhm.
was in the 9th century, 10th century. He was saying that,
Wow.
right? So the patriarch Abraham was brought up in the religion of the Sabaeans. That would be the Yemeni Sabaeans, those moon worshippers, ignoble remnants of the nations left in remote corners of the earth, like the savage Turks in the extreme north, and the Indians in the extreme south. These are remnants of Sabaeans who once filled the earth, the pagans who once filled the earth. Um, so let's continue. In their writings, Noah was rebuked and imprisoned because he worshipped God, and with many other accounts about him. The Sabaeans contend that Seth differed from his father Adam as regards the worship of the moon.
Okay, so there's a divergence there between father and son, apparently. That's
And most of the Gnostics before the advent of Christianity, when Gnosticism took on a very Christian sort of a flavor or cover or facade, they were all Sethian Gnostics. You'll find that most of them are derived from the book of Enoch. Enoch is the son of Seth.
right. Okay. Okay, and is that why they could have that's already like if there's a divergence there between um uh what like for example, so Seth differed from Adam and Seth then like the Book of Enoch comes into play and they are basically branded Gnostics. Then would you say Islam is still following that trajectory, or is there some mix up from what they
So
contend Adam still
there's
believed
this
in?
there's
That
this
makes sense.
look, it's really hard to tell. I mean, it's hard to tell. Or we can just look at the evidence and try to construct a conclusion.
Mm,
So it would seem there's this pagan foundation, and then it changes through time as it goes to different geographies. It starts to add different ideas. For instance, if I
okay.
go to the very earliest, now in theory, the very earliest Gnostic within the Christian era would be Simon Magus or Simon Magus,
Okay.
right? That's within the New Testament. You got Simon Magus. Then after that, the very earliest, man, I would have to go and bring up a different presentation again, but the
Okay,
very,
no,
very
don't worry.
earliest, yeah, I'm not going to go there right now,
Mhm.
but just briefly, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I don't mind, if you don't mind, I don't mind deviating and having the conversation, you know.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, no, the Book of Enoch has long been considered, Farish, the Book of Enoch has long been considered non-canonical. It's deuterocanonical, in other words, secondary canon. It's considered, yeah, it's never been regarded as primary canon, except within the Ethiopian Orthodox Tawhid Church, which is where the term Tawhid in Islam comes from. And many of the practices, as we discussed last week, of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church were taken into Islam, maybe modified, but the same concepts are there. The Christology, to some degree, the very Jewish Christology is there as well. And they still revere the Book of Enoch. They still follow that. So unfortunately, I think that influence also impacted whoever Muhammad was. That impacted him as well. And you can see the influence in the beliefs. So the earliest that I can find of the Gnostic sects are called the Al-Chasai, and they had a book. So these guys are late first century, very early second century. So the late 90s of the first century, they had the Book of Al-Chasai. And for instance, there are many parallels within the Book of Al-Chasai, within Islamic beliefs, Islamic hadiths. But also, for instance, they're the first religion to state. Remember within Islam that you can dissemble. You can say, no, I'm not a Muslim. You can use taqiyya. Now, the Book of Al-Chasai explicitly has the very same ruling as in Islam, that you can lie about your religion. It's
Okay,
stated
fun.
explicitly.
Yeah. And
So,
then Lloyd, really quickly as well, just to move on to Judaism for a second, because the Quran directly says that the Jews have taken Ezra as God. So do you know where that, because that's another deviation, or are they referring to another set of Gnostics within Judaism then when they're discussing that?
very
Just really
probable
quickly if you
heretical
can.
Jews.
Okay.
Look, yeah, that question's been going around in circles for a long time. It's either they misunderstood, which seems to be very common, or there was a heretical sect of Jews.
Okay. In that vicinity that they obviously thought was speaking for the majority of Jews,
Yeah,
Orthodox
correct.
Jews.
Because it
Right.
looks like that particular ideas of theirs often were very, very regional.
Okay, yeah,
So
exactly. And that's where you're saying like obviously as like the geographical variations change, that same form of paganism gets like a couple of layers here and there added to it, and it kind of starts taking a shape of its own.
Yeah, it clearly changed over time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, just
Yeah, right.
Ray, thank you so
Archaic.
much for your
That's so.
super. Go ahead.
No, it's hopelessly archaic. That's such such a good use of English.
Yeah, right? Hopelessly archaic. It is indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ray, for your super chat. Ray
Okay.
says,
Yeah.
this is for Tubi's love, and I'm feeling the love. Congrats, Nuria Khan, for the wicked scoop. Islam is hopelessly archaic, and I'm so glad for this. As am I, Ray. Thank you so much. And all credit goes to Lloyd for dismantling it in this way. I'm learning so much. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. I also appreciate the questions. The questions also help to, flesh it out and make it interactive. Okay, just on that point, Hassan, taqiyya is one of many, many doctrines of lying within Islam. You must understand, taqiyya is a very minor part of the doctrine of lying within Islam. There are two kinds of taqiyya, right? There's taqiyya where you deny your religion for your safety, which they will appeal to because obviously they're saying, well, if you don't want to die, you would do this. And fine, that is perfectly understandable. It's a choice of the lesser of two evils. But there's a second version of taqiyya, second definition of taqiyya, which means tactical deception for the purposes of spreading Islam. That's a very different application of taqiyya. But understand, taqiyya is one of many, many different doctrines of lying and deception within Islam. The major doctrine of lying within Islam is called hiyal, Hiyal. Okay, so this is a very long, very lengthy discussion. It would take me 2 hours just to go through the doctrine of lying within Islam. That's a discussion on its own, just to show you the different kinds of lying. Understand, Islam, again in the West, we use the term morality, right? Islam does not have the concept of morality that is lawful and unlawful. We have right and wrong. They have lawful and unlawful. And understand that what is unlawful can be made lawful. There is nothing that is unlawful in Islam that cannot be made lawful given the conditions. Okay, and so they have, as I said, it's either legal or illegal. There's no right and wrong, and they are so lying in Islam is not only legal, it is mandatory. It is obligatory. And I know this might come as, this might seem a very strong statement, but lying in Islam under Islamic law is not only legal, it is mandatory.
Particularly for its expansionist agenda. Is that correct?
For many, many reasons. Yes, that's one of them. This is many, many reasons. There's a huge number of reasons,
thank you, Lloyd.
Yeah.
Farish was also saying, thank you, Lloyd, for the Enoch explanation. It bugged me for years. And Marcus is saying, Lloyd has been a real gift. Ray is saying, Lloyd, you're crushing it. And Marcus is agreeing with you here, saying, correct, fundamentally, Islam rejects morality. It's a code you follow or you are an enemy. And Ray, just finishing off on the taqiyya point, is like the kid with his hand caught in the cookie jar. But yeah, sorry, continue.
That's
Sorry.
fine.
Yeah,
please go ahead. If you
go
want
ahead
to say
and
anything, you want to add anything, please, by all means.
No, that's fine. I was just keeping an eye on the chat as well, making sure
So
everything's
I know I've made some very strong statements, but I would have to bring out the Sharia again. I'd have to bring out the fiqh, and I'd have to bring out the doctrine on this. So, and then we'd have to go through it. And
well, stop
taqiyya
scamming, man.
is not
Thank
limited
you.
to Shia Islam. Taqiyya is not limited to Shia Islam. In fact, if you read the Sunni tafsir, the scholars call it taqiyya as well. Technically, taqiyya is technically a Shia practice. The name technically is Shia, right? For Sunni Islam, they have a name for it as well, called Muddarat. So the Sunni name is Muddarat. If you look up Muddarat, you'll find very little reference to it because the Sunnis just use the term taqiyya because it's the one that they all know. And yes, it mandates lying for every reason you can think of, and some you haven't. Okay? You can lie whole day, every day, for free. It is not just, yes, it began as a defense against persecution by Sunnis. However, it has far, far wider application than that. I've got a show on my channel. I've got several, 2 or 3 on that. There's a couple that there's a very short one. There's a middle length one, about an hour. There's one about 8 minutes, one about an hour, and there's one like 2.5 hours. It'll tell you everything you want to know about lying in Islam, but we're afraid to ask.
And I think the source, stop saying man if you'd like the source. I'm sure, Lloyd, in that video you're talking about, you've got the source for it as well, right? What you're talking about?
Yeah, there's plenty. As I said, I've got the videos, but let me see. So while I'm here, I'm just going to try and find.
Also, sorry, just Lloyd, while you're doing that as well, I was trying to write it down as well. Zagros, I'll get that. Sorry, can you just repeat the word for Takia, the Sunni version, just so we can all go and have a read?
Technically, like Muddarat.
Moderat, okay.
It could be this Muddarat. Technically, it's called Muddarat. You'll find very little reference to it. What you will find is they all just use Taqiya, even though the Sunni scholars use it as well.
Okay,
Let
yeah,
me
that's what
just.
I imagine. So Zagros, you might not find many references with that word, as Lloyd is saying. But I
So let
think
me
that's
just.
because Sunni scholars have jumped on the bandwagon of using that word as well. Claudius,
They certainly have. So let me see. I'm trying to find the reference within.
sure, no worries. Claudius, thanks for your super chat. Claudius is saying it's not lying, it is an alternative truth.
P746. Okay, so what happens is in Islam, if you lie for the purposes of defending Islam, it's not considered a lie. It's not considered a lie.
So it's very much
So I'm
legal,
just going to give you a brief
lawful.
overview since we are talking about this.
Sure.
Okay, so this is okay. Okay, so let me go here. This is in the Sharia. Okay, this is the fiqh. Notice it says here a chapter on lying, section R 8.0. Then there is permissible lying. Then there's lying, which is allowed between husband and wife, or when a husband is allowed to lie to his wife. Why? Because Muhammad lied to his wife, right? Then you've got lying to circumvent those forbidding the permissible. Islam is permissible. Forbidding it, trying to stop Islam from spreading is not permissible. Therefore, you must lie to stop those who are forbidding the permissible. That's me. That's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then
So
you notice it says
any situation that's against your is against your interest, lying is lawful, essentially, and required, obligatory almost.
Oh no, yeah, it gets this is a summary. This is a very short. Notice what it says here under section R 8.2. It says obligatory lying. Obligatory lying.
Obligatory lying.
Okay. And
Have
then
you ever
you'll see
seen those
here,
two words together, Lloyd? I've not. Only in Islam.
And then if you are not keen to lie outright, or you feel too embarrassed to lie outright, you are then recommended to, because it is religiously precautionary, to give a misleading impression, to use an alternative to outright lying, to mislead with deceptive words, which is, as we know, lying.
And as we know, it's very much on brand, because even Allah is the best of the deceivers in the Quran.
Yeah, Allah is a makkar. He's a liar.
Yeah.
So someone asked, what is that book? Is there a book titled Sharia? No, Sharia is the Islamic law. Sharia technically is, forget all the definitions you'll find online. The Sharia is the will of Allah. Okay, it's what Allah wants. So the Quran is appointed to the will of Allah. So all of that had to be exegeted. And the scholars had to formally make an orthodoxy for Islam. And so the scholars had to take all that, and it took about 300 years, 400 years to eventually write. The Sharia is the Talmud of Islam, right? Just like the Jews have a Talmud, which has exegeted the Torah, right? The Torah are the 5 books of Moses. So you've got this Talmud, which is 12 million words, which has exegeted 5 chapters of the Bible. Now you've got the Sharia, which has exegeted the Quran and the Hadith. And you've got this massive, massive corpus of work, which explains everything in Islam without the confusion, without the deception. Right?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Lloyd. Real quick as well, To Be Love, thank you so much again. Ray, it's for you again. He's subscribed and tries to watch all your videos. Sorry, I don't understand Urdu, but I'm a big fan. Ray is an amazing, amazing activist who's recently come out on the scene and just really, really helping to change the game on both scenes. So thank you, To Be. And just this, yeah, holy lying, exactly. And as Qasim is saying, and Lloyd is pointing out, in favor of Islam, any sin will be virtue, is basically
Yes.
the essence. Yeah, totally. Lloyd, just
Yeah.
a quick question for you. Sorry. Have you got a video on Mecca not existing in the Hijaz before Islam was made up?
Look, check out Fanda Films, Jay Smith, his channel. Check out Sneakers Corner, Mal, who's now on Rumble, called Origins. Unfortunately, this is not an area that I've specialized in. I do touch on this within this presentation. I mean, we're meandering right now, but I do touch on this. Certainly, I do touch on this. So it is a topic I will come to within this presentation. Maybe not today because we're jumping around a little bit, but
Yeah, we
I
are.
will touch on it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Devil's Advocate, the Lloyd's channel is in the description of this video, so do go ahead and check it out. But it is Lloyd's full name, Lloyd De Young, on YouTube. But somebody will definitely pass you the link to his channel. Oh, Ray's just done it. There we go. Yeah, please go ahead and subscribe. He's doing amazing work. Thank you.
Yeah, I would answer. Yeah, look, I'm going to skip over something in the chat. I'm not keen to get into a bun fight right now, which I would win. But so moving forward, okay. So yeah, any questions, Nuria, before I continue?
No, I'm literally, this is all new information for me, so go ahead. Hit us with more.
Yeah, no. So look, I know I've made very strong statements, but I can certainly provide an entire. I mean, I could do an entire episode just showing the evidence for that. I could drown you in references, drown you in information, right? It's just that. But yeah, Okay, so moving on. So Maimonides calls Abraham the pillar of the world. He became convinced that he's a spiritual divine being, which is not a body nor a force residing in a body, so something beyond the realm of matter. Okay,
Right.
but he was called the pillar of the world, which is very interesting. This pillar idea that Abraham was a pillar, and there's a book. The great book on this subject is on the Nabatean agriculture, translated by Ibn Washia. And I shall explain why the Sabaeans had their religious doctrines in a work on agriculture. The book is full of the absurdities of idolatrous people, and with those things to which the minds of the multitude easily turn and adhere. It speaks of talismans, the means of directing the influence of the stars, of witchcraft, of spirits and demons that dwell in the wilderness. Now, I do cover this later on, but understand within Islam, remember I've mentioned you have the star and the sun. Sorry, the moon and the sun. The moon is the moon god, the male, and then the star is his wife, and then the sun is his wife. Sorry, my bad. The moon is the man, the sun is the woman. They're married. They have kids. The kids are the stars. Okay, that's the Sabaean belief that the stars are like a secondary part of the pantheon. Within Orthodox Islamic belief, the stars are alive. The stars are higher beings that have souls. This is Orthodox Islamic belief. We'll get to that. Understand? And then you've
Yeah.
got demons that dwell in the wilderness, the jinn.
I was just thinking, Lloyd, as you were reading that last bit out to me, like I couldn't help but also just think of the kind of just summoning and going into caves and summoning jinns and spirits that even Khadija, Muhammad's first wife, was involved in as a priestess at that time. It's pretty much, it's all kind of alluding to that same thing, and you can see remnants of that belief, if not that belief itself, heavily present there.
Yeah, yeah. Someone says this pagan belief, Marcus Schmidt. Yeah, I'm really just touching on the pagan stuff. I want to do a series on the pagan beliefs at the time. I'm busy working on that. It'll take me a couple of months. I've got such a mountain to work through, but yeah, it's incredibly interesting, and it explains the Islamic culture very well. When we go into that, when I get to go into that. Thank you very much.
Lloyd most definitely is a bank of information. Thank you.
All right,
And thank you, Sheikh Boyadi, for your super chat. Thank you very, very much and welcome. I hope you enjoy this.
great stuff. Thank you. Thanks, Sheikh. Right, so now let's look at Abram and the pillars. Yahweh hates pillars. So the God of the Bible hates pillar worship. In Genesis, Abram and his descendants worship in a manner that includes mention of trees and pillars. Okay, this is this reference is Israelite religions and archaeological and biblical survey. I usually don't include the references. Mostly my references are here in the bottom. You'll see in the notes section. I normally have references here because it's just easier. I don't always have space on the page to actually put all of my references.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so I normally just put it there. So it's not that I don't have them. I just generally don't put them on the page because it takes up space. Because I'm trying to make the font as big as possible for people to read.
Yeah, no, I love that. Your slides are so crystal clear. I haven't even asked you to zoom in once. It's
Yeah, no,
perfect.
thanks. Because man, I struggle, man. Some guys put like regular sized text. And they're like, how am I supposed to see it on my cell phone?
Yeah, exactly. And even watching back is an experience for people. If it's full screen, it just flows so much better with text this size. But yes, thank you, Lloyd.
No, thanks, Sheikh Biadi again. And I think you've got another fan, Nuria.
People are
Okay,
loving this, but yes, carry on. Thank you.
so notice in Deuteronomy 16, verses 21 to 22, I'm using the New King James Version, you shall not plant for yourself any tree as a wooden image near the altar which you build for yourself to the Lord your God. And 22, you shall not set up a sacred pillar which the Lord your God hates. A different variation says, do not set up holy stone pillars. The Lord your God hates them. How many pillars were in the Kaaba?
Was it 6?
Originally 6. There's now 3.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
Abraham was the first one to build it apparently, so he must have built it with those pillars in.
With pillars.
Mm.
Correct. Abraham supposedly built it. And Abraham was a worshiper of pillars. That is biblical. That's within the Bible. That's the context of the Bible. Abraham
It's
was a pagan like his father.
Yeah. And I mean, even now, just looking back at like modern or like Hajj in general, the pillar that either where you throw stones, you pelt stones at the pillar, which effectively represents the devil or Satan, it just shows that it's like the way it's been vilified here to try and make that separation, even though they don't understand that you're either way, you're kind of stuck, literally stuck between a rock and a hard place, whichever way you're looking at it.
Yep. So let's continue. So notice this is in the book Genesis and Exodus, right? So if patriarchal religion corresponds to some kind of historical reality, then presumably this is either some form of a genuinely ancient pre-Yahwistic religion. Remember, Muhammad was looking for the religion of Abraham, the religion before Judaism, right? And this is
Yes.
what Islam alludes to, right? So presumably this is some form of a genuinely ancient pre-Yahweh religion,
Hmm.
right? Or it is something that was an unorthodox strand within Yahweh, within Yahwistic religion, prior to the reforms of Josiah, a king in the Bible, Jewish king. So the difficulty with the latter suggestion is precisely the complete lack of that holiness and exclusiveness, which is one of the most fundamental characteristics of Yahwism. So you had all this polytheistic paganism going on, and then Abraham, he meets the one true God, and the one true God says to him, you will have no other gods before me. I am the true God. I am El. No one else bears my name, right? He's then told, and his descendants are told to destroy the altars, destroy the pagan some idols, right? So that's just something. So they're saying, look, then maybe there was some kind of genuinely ancient pre-Yahwistic religion,
Hmm.
right? So there seems to have been one, because if it's an unorthodox strand within, then it says like, well, at least according to this scholar, he doesn't think there could have been a heresy, or there could well have been one. We
Yeah,
know for a fact there were heresies, but that's just a point to make. So now I'm going to go to, I'm not going to belabor this point or spend too much time, but I want to go to
sure.
a place called Göbekli Tepe, right?
Okay, in Turkey,
And
modern day Turkey, right? Yeah.
correct, in place called Sanliurfa. So according to some Jewish, and notice Sanliurfa is about 12 kilometers, if I recall, from Haran, or 30 kilometers from Haran, where Abraham lived. And Abraham's brother is called Haran, named after the city.
Okay.
So according to some Jewish and Muslim sources, Edessa or Urfa is Ur Kasdim, the hometown of Abraham. So I'm not going to get into a long belabored point about this, but biblically, based on that evidence, scholars had always assumed that where Abraham was from, was in the north, right, around Haran. Then in 1938, you had a guy with a lot of money, great PR skills, found this huge ziggurat in southern Mesopotamia, and he says, this city is worthy of Abraham, and blah, blah, blah. And suddenly, because this guy had such a big, was so popular, so well funded, he was able to then convince everyone that is to the south. However, if you look in history, there's at least 5 up north alone, right?
Mm.
So according to the sources that I've read, the conclusion I've come to is that was to the north, But that's a very long discussion outside of the scope of this. So
Sure.
one scholar called Rensburg points out that this location makes better sense of the biblical references. This was always the view prior to 1938. So if Terah, the name of the father of Abraham, and these will be very important soon, and his family, they left Ur Kasdim to travel to Canaan, but they stopped en route in Haran, then Ur Kasdim should be north of Haran. Okay? In other words, if Haran is here, okay, this is Sanlefa, this is Haran here, okay? So if they
Yeah.
stopped, then they would go to Canaan right here. They would go to Israel right here. Now, we'll get to this, so we'll cover this again in more detail shortly. Now,
Okay.
so 12 kilometers northeast of Sanlefa, very close to Haran, where Abraham spent a large part of his life, is the famous Neolithic Göbekli Tepe, the world's oldest known temple from roughly 10,000 BC. It's now been discovered there's one even older than Göbekli Tepe. There's one that's 2,000 to 3,000 years older than it, which is crazy stuff.
Yeah,
So this
because
area,
we're talking very old now.
extremely, yeah. So this area was part of a network of the first human settlements where the agricultural revolution took place. Interestingly, the Nabateans, not the Nabateans, the Yemenis, the Sabaeans, their history was in a book on agriculture.
True, yeah, as we saw earlier.
Yeah. And because of its association with Jewish, Christian, and Islamic history and the legend according to which it was the hometown of Abraham, Urfa is nicknamed the city of prophets. Haran is named the city of the moon.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. We're going to cover all of that now. So in the time available to us. So is it in Iraq or Turkey? As I said, according to the sources that I've read, I lean in the direction of the north. Okay.
Okay.
So there was more than one Places named was something linguistically close to be a candidate. Okay, such as Ura, for instance, have turned up in numerous ancient inscriptions. At Ugarit on the Mediterranean coast in Syria, at Nuzi in northeastern Iraq, Alalak in Turkey, about 100 miles north of Ugarit, and most recently, something like 2,000 or 3,000, or as many as 5,000, can't remember exactly, inscribed tablets were found in Ebla in northern Syria. So there's not all of those have been translated yet, so they're still working on it. It's going to take years. The Ebla tablets include references to places called Ur, Ura, and Urau, all in the north, all in Syria, Turkey. Unfortunately, none of these references can be located precisely, but the find spots where they were found indicate the cities were most likely in central or northern Syria or southern Turkey, near Haran. This is here. Turkey in Haran. So I'll move back out. This area up here, this is Jerusalem, that's Haran. This is where Ur is supposed to be, the great ziggurat, which is far, far away from everything.
Yeah.
Okay? So I'll continue. Now, Haran is where Abraham... I don't know. This is outside of the scope because I'm talking about the origins. Now, look, everyone wants one single origin of Islam. Islam started on Tuesday, the 4th of April, 632 at 12 Mill Street in Mecca. Okay? And it was a bunch of 3 guys. One of them was Bigfoot, one of them was the representative of the Illuminati, and one was a gray alien, and they made it up. I mean, everyone wants a nice pat answer. It happened, bang. Islam took hundreds of years to develop. Even the Sharia took hundreds of years. The Quran seems to have taken 200 years to write.
And I think that's actually what you're unpacking here in this presentation, because we're literally seeing that this evolution, and we're seeing the different layers added on, and we're seeing the offshoots, and this is all like just the different components of what we see, albeit we're saying like it could be Sabaean, like, you know, in very close form today, but we are seeing all these like geographical influences, the name changing, all of that. You having a chuckle?
Farish is very funny.
Yeah, April Fools. I mean, I do think it is one of the biggest cons in human history. So by that standard, yes.
So Haran is where Abram, okay, as he was called then, went with his father Terah after they left Ur. So there is no dispute regarding the location of Haran. And Michael Fowler, you may be right. I mean, we may be right. So the Turkish government has denied any excavation in Haran. Okay, it's not allowed. Oddly enough, the Saudi Arabian government doesn't allow excavation in Mecca.
Yeah.
You know, that makes the wonder. Wow. Indeed, that is interesting. That is very interesting. I need to look into that. Thank you for bringing that up. I did mention rock carvings, or rather an inscription by Abraha, who supposedly took the elephants to Mecca in Yemen, where he mentions that Muhammad, when he mentions Muhammad in reference to Jesus. And he mentions the very first name of Allah in the Quran, which is what was the first name of
Rahman?
Allah in the Quran? Rahman,
Rahman,
in
yeah.
reference to God. Yeah. So the carvings, the inscriptions do say that. So Southern Ur. So just very briefly to run through this, okay? This is not the point of it. Just something interesting. Southern Ur lies on the west bank of the Euphrates. When Abraham was an old man, he sent his servant back to the land of my birth, Ur, to find a wife for his son Isaac. So Abraham's servant went back to the land of Abraham's birth, found Rebekah, and so on. A generation later, Isaac's son Jacob goes back, presumably to Ur, to work for Laban. After working, he then flees to Canaan. But they say to do so, he had to cross the Euphrates in Genesis 31:21. So if Ur is on the west bank of the Euphrates, as southern Ur is, it would not be necessary to cross the Euphrates to travel to Canaan.
Right. Okay.
So the southern Ur, thus, according to this logic, look, there's a lot more. I mean, man, there's all books on this, right? But the southern Ur, thus, cannot be the place that Abraham sent his servant. So it had to be Haran. That's what they're saying, right? So let's have a look. Göbekli Tepe is not a single temple. It's a network of temples. Here's a handful. I think it's 13 on this page. So this is Göbekli Tepe. This is Haran down here. The city of Haran is just here at the bottom. Notice there are numerous. This is Sanliurfa, okay, more or less. Now, notice there are numerous tepes. There's not just Göbekli Tepe. There's numerous tepes. Let's have another look. This is a map from the team. This is 19 different tepes.
Wow.
And apparently there are dozens. According to one of them said on the note, they said there are dozens. These are the ones that they've released the locations of where they're making digs. So Göbekli Tepe was a network. Now understand, Göbekli Tepe is not even the oldest. I believe they state here that, I think, if not Sefer Tepe, I'm not sure, it's one of, or Karahan Tepe, one of these is actually older than Göbekli Tepe by a couple of thousand years.
Okay.
So,
and you're
now,
saying that this is not even an exhaustive
no, yeah,
full
apparently
picture
it's
we
not.
have of all the tepes. Okay.
Yeah, apparently there's dozens. So this is just 19 of them, but apparently there are dozens. That I don't have a figure, but the team apparently says there are dozens. Now, understand, I'm not stating that this is the religion of Abraham, but so what I'm getting at is that these people of that time must have been aware there was a very old religion, the original religion. This is the oldest network of temples in history. Nothing is older than this. So with 19 of these that are known of today, at least that we have access to, with dozens apparently in the area, they must have been aware they were the remnants of an old religion, and they wanted to find the original religion. Abraham happened to be hanging around right here. Abraham, this is where Abraham lived for a long time. His brother is named, his great-grandfather named after towns in the area. So he's closely associated. So they might have thought, well, Abraham was here, the original religion was here, the Muslims might have made the connection and said, okay, that's the religion of Abraham, and it's the worship of stone pillars.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly plausible to me.
Yeah, so we'll continue. Thanks. So let's have a look at a 9,000-year-old shrine in Jordan, what we would call a Silim. Okay, remember Silim?
Very interesting, yes.
Oh, the roots.
Guys,
remember
do you remember
root?
that from last week? Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
This is the root derivation.
So Muslims always tell you Silim means, Islam, right? Which means, they'll tell you it means peace, but we know it's not peace. It means submission.
Yeah.
Submission to God, okay? But, so we have Silim, okay, fine and well. Then we also have Silim, which is the root of Shalom and the root of Salam.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, of course, what Muslims don't tell you is that originally, so these are the very first use of Silim. Oops, in my typing, I spell very well, but I type really badly. was the star god Shalim. Okay, the very first use was the pagan star god Shalim. The second use of Salim in history, basically, is the word graven idol.
Yeah.
Okay, a graven idol.
So now, again, sorry, Lloyd, just from the top, Shalim is pagan. It's the god. Star god.
We'll come to him later, yeah.
Then we've got graven idol. And look, number 4 is what we think we are today. But look what's happened before that.
Yeah. So this is what we have. So understand. So now let's look at these graven idols. Notice the graven idols and the stone pillars.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this is Damascus up here. Haran is a little bit north. This is Petra. Okay. Abraham eventually settled down here. Okay. Abraham died close to here. Okay. And this is very close to Petra.
Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Right. And don't forget also that just up here, remember we had those stone pillars in Arabia? I showed you there are 50 stone pillars arranged in circles in Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those stone pillars. There's 50 of them. Now, Göbekli Tepe, just that alone, is a network of 19 temples, circular temples. Göbekli Tepe is not one site, it's 19 sites. And I don't mean 19 spread across the country. I mean, the Göbekli Tepe itself is 19 locations in the immediate vicinity.
Okay,
And then
and
you've got
are
this
you
19
talking about like circular like structures within a circular structure then? Kind of
so
thing?
Göbekli Tepe would be like 19 circular structures in the close proximity of each other.
Right, okay.
Right? And remember, I showed you there's 19 of these temples all around, at least that we know of, all around Turkey, right? Just in that area. That's 19 separate locations.
Yeah.
Okay. But Göbekli Tepe, where Göbekli Tepe itself is, there's 19 or 20 of these temples.
Okay.
Okay.
Damn.
In the immediate vicinity. Right. And so here in Saudi Arabia, you've got these little stone circles, these megalithic stone circles. Here you've got this megalithic temple with stone pillars and graven idols. And then you've got Petra right next to it. So this is called Jilal Akasabia. Okay, the French and Jordanian archaeologists made this very unique discovery, 9,000 years old. Thanks, Marcus. Okay, and this sheds new life on the prehistoric religion in the Levant. They have graven idols and pillar statues from the Neolithic. And this is exactly what in Genesis, God says to Abraham, no worship of pillars, no graven idols. Thou shalt not bow down to graven idols. Thou shalt, 10 commandments.
Yeah, precisely.
So there's so now let's continue. So yeah, any comments on that before I move on?
No, I think it's really interesting. This whole kind of pillar worship is coming like full circle, and you see that just with the derivation that you've showed us as well, and where that root word came from, literally meaning graven idols at one point. It's becoming a lot clearer, like what's happening here.
So if
I'm
this
just
is the original religion of Abraham, which they might have thought was the original religion of Abraham, then they had graven idols and stone pillars. And then obviously Abraham was a pillar worshiper, a pagan. So Islam decided Abraham worshipped paganism. Well, hey, we're pagans today.
Yeah, exactly. And for that, we all fit into that Hanifa kind of mold, and we'll take that on.
Sorry, I missed that. I was reading something. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Are you reading this?
Yes.
Yeah. So just before we move on to Abraham a bit more, Secular Rarity saying, wow, all of these connections are just super cool. And really, when you step back from the view that Islam has to be the perfect word of Allah, it becomes much more interesting and way less harmful. Exactly. And that was honestly the motive for me to have like bring Lloyd on and do this, because like being a believing Muslim at one point and thinking that the Quran was like the sanctimonious, eternal, timeless word of God. And now looking at it historically, archaeologically, just delving into the history, you're like, what? It's so interesting how it came together. But what we are taught, like what package we're sold it in, and what we're told to believe. And if you strip it back, it's insane, the findings. But also, I just think it's testimony to how Lloyd has put this together and how he's walking us through this picture. I feel like I've gone back in time and we're tracing this all the way back. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So
No
back to
worries.
Abraham was a very key figure here. Now, I'm going to jump to the end for a minute just so that everyone knows what the conclusion is. Okay, spoiler warning. So, what was the point I'm going to make here? Abraham is the patriarch of the Jews, right? I mean, obviously he's one of the many patriarchs, but effectively Abraham, father of the nation. We'll get into all that, right? But the conclusion here is that obviously then Christians revere Abraham because they part of the line of Judaism. Obviously there's still a split. Orthodox Jews don't like the Christians because they think they're heretics, fine and well, right? I mean, all those issues aside, you still got, and the Old Testament is a testament to the coming of Jesus and all of that. I mean, that's all the theological debate and discussion. But you got Christians, you got Jews, you got Abraham. Abraham gives you the Jews gives you the Christians. Fine and well.
Yeah.
Then you have the Muslims. They claim to be part of the religion of Abraham. They claim to be an Abrahamic religion. Of course, they are not, because you see, it was only, and I'll get to this later within this presentation, but only after the Jews told Muhammad, "You're talking nonsense, go away." Only when they rejected him thoroughly, they completely laughed at him, then, only then, in the Islamic record, did he suddenly turn around and say, "Oh, by the way, Abraham was a Muslim too."
And I'm from the lineage through Ishmael. He clung on to that.
Yeah, but Abraham was never originally part of what Muhammad was saying. Abraham,
Yes,
he
I see what
suddenly
you
added
mean.
Abraham only when the Jews told him to get lost.
I
Then he said,
see. So was that him, do you reckon, trying to legitimize his
yes,
position then,
correct.
yeah?
That's exactly
Okay.
what he was trying to do. He wanted to legitimize it because they said, "You're clearly plagiarizing from things that came before." This is mentioned in the Quran. So let me talk briefly about Abraham. And so in Jewish tradition, do you have any questions? Sorry, before I go on.
No, sorry, I was just reading some of the comments.
Right. So
Muhammad rejection reaction. Yeah, in a way, this is what Lloyd was just alluding to. He didn't care to establish this connection with Abraham until the Jews actually told him to get lost, and then he's like, "Hold on, let me come and attach myself to who you revere and legitimize, well, what was proto-Islam at that point."
right. So Abraham was born under the name Abram in the city of Ur in Babylonia in the year 1948 from creation, roughly 1800 BC. Look, the dates vary, okay?
Right.
So he was the son of Terah, an idol merchant, but from his childhood he questioned the faith of his father and he sought the truth. So he comes to believe that the entire universe was the work of a single creator, and he teaches this belief to others. He tries to convince his father of the folly of idol worship, and one day his father leaves the shop. Abraham is left alone, takes a hammer, smashes all the idols except the largest one, puts the hammer in the hand of the biggest one. His father comes back, says, "What happened?" He says, "Well, the big idol smashed all the little idols." His father says, "Don't be ridiculous. These idols have no life." And he says, "Well, then why do you worship them?" So eventually, this one true creator that Abraham would worship calls to him and makes him an offer. If Abraham leaves his home and family, God would make him a great nation and bless him. So Abraham accepts this offer, and the covenant, the Brit, between God and the Jewish people is now established. So Abraham now founds the Jewish people, the Hebrews, right? That's in
Right.
Genesis 12. The idea of Brit, or covenant, okay, is fundamental to traditional Judaism. So we have a covenant, a contract with God. Now, understand, when you become a Muslim and you say the Shahada, it's a contract.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
it is a
essentially,
contract,
yeah.
right? Understand, it's a contract, but also, unfortunately, you get different kinds of contracts. You might have a contract of marriage, which is a very if you look from a Christian point of view, a marriage contract is something that is very holy, sacred. Okay, it's whereas if you look at Islam, a marriage contract is simply a contract that you will, well, it's
Provide
a contract to
intercourse
have
for
sex,
yeah, exactly.
to have legal intercourse. It's really just a contract to have legal intercourse without having your head chopped off, right?
Precisely.
That's
Even
really
the
what it
word
is.
for it, the NKH root in Arabic for nikah, nuk, the NK, it means intercourse. Yeah,
Well,
so there
yeah.
you go.
So
But
discussion
also,
for another time.
yeah,
Yeah.
but Lloyd, just real quick as well, when you were just in the previous slide, when you were talking about that Jewish tradition of Abraham, the smashing the idols, this entire story is literally almost again like the way that Muhammad's beginnings of destroying the idols in the Kaaba is kind of portrayed to us in this way, that he was turning away from the religion of his forefathers. These lines I've heard people put into the mouth of Muhammad and saying these idols have no life, they can't do anything, why worship them? Even in the propaganda type Muslim Islamic films, like even in The Message, this scene is like portrayed as one of the most profound scenes for the beginnings of Islam, when Muhammad walks into the Kaaba, literally destroys all the idols. I think there were 360 idols in the Kaaba at that moment,
Yep.
and it's pretty much that I could not help but think of that story almost verbatim.
It's clearly plagiarized from that.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at
Yeah.
that story in the Sirah. Okay, this is the
Mhm.
life of Muhammad the Prophet by Sayyid. Good grief, what is Sayyid? Sayyid.
Sayyid.
This means he's born in the lineage of the
Of the
Prophet.
Prophet. Yeah,
Aftarihi.
3 times over.
3 times exactly. You have to rub that in. So
Mhm.
Abdullah ibn Masud says, entering the Masjidul Haram, entering Mecca's Okay. Entering the Kaaba, the Holy Prophet started breaking and demolishing the idols. There were 360 idols, okay, affixed on the walls and on the roof of the Kaaba with lead or tin. Any idol near which the Prophet went and towards which he pointed his cane. That's Muhammad. This is a real picture I took from the.
I was going to say
From the
Harry Potter in the making, but Voldemort is way more representative.
so Muhammad would walk towards the idol and he would point his cane. He would say, "Right has come and falsehood has vanished. Falsehood is destined to vanish." The idol would fall headlong on the ground without anyone touching it.
He wouldn't even need to touch it. He cast a spell from his wand and gone.
Yeah, Muhammad's that good. So this is in the Gospels of Muhammad.
Yeah. This is the Sirah. This is literally the Sirah itself.
Yeah, this is the Sirah.
So there's that story, and you can just see they've embellished some details there, but it's pretty much a plagiarized story.
Yeah.
Even
so embellishment is not only legal; it is considered recommended in Islam. That falls under what's called the ilm al-badi. The ilm al-badi, the Islamic sciences, which are not sciences. So the ilm al-badi is the Islamic science of speech, but it's the science of rhetorical speech. But this is speech that includes embellishment, artifice, and there's a third one. Artifice is basically lying to make things up, and embellishment is exaggeration.
Okay.
Momo magic, yeah, for definite, right? So what you have is, yes, within the Islamic sciences, you're expected to embellish and use artifice. Artifice is to lie, to deceive. This is a proper usage of Islamic science.
Wow, lying to deceive. And so you're saying, so embellishments are, so with that point, are you trying to say, for example, it's encouraged to add more fluff to a story to give your idea and your ancestry
to make
more,
it more beautiful? Yes, exactly.
and more legitimacy and more kind of powerful over the others, and so you have the claim to lord, like the lord over others. So that's also part of the Islamic doctrine. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is.
Wow. Okay. So jazz it up as much as you need to sell this.
That is legal.
Okay.
Ilm al-badi, the branch of the rhetorical science. Notice, rhetoric is not a science. Okay, rhetoric is speech to persuade.
Yeah,
which
true.
deals with the Sorry, just read that. You read that.
Ilm al-Badi, the branch of rhetorical science, which deals with the beautification of literary style, the artifices of the ornamentation, and the embellishment of speech. Holy crap. It is there in writing. Okay, no wonder they haven't held back with the fantastical claims and the language and details, which really make you, think twice and thrice about a story. Obviously not as a believing Muslim, you take it at face value, but yeah, that's why some of those ridiculous details have made it in.
Okay, let's look at briefly just the meaning of artifice without going into this. A clever trick or device, a clever strategy intended to deceive or defraud. That's an artifice. That's what they mean.
If you,
false or insincere behavior.
What you're also showing us, Lloyd, is literally falsehood and deception and fraudulent behavior is literally seeped into the very notions of Islam as an ideology. I mean, it's almost built on fake it till you make it kind of thing, and don't let anybody know. It's so twisted, from the very beginnings, from its foundations.
Yeah, yes, that is true.
That's it, Marcus.
Said that.
The art of spinning a yarn.
So understand, Islam is built on this deception. It is recommended that you do this, and that is true. So let me continue here. Yeah. So, okay. So Abraham, right? So let me see. Yeah. Any questions about what we've just discussed about this ilm al-badi?
Not from me. I'm very much with you on that. I'm just a bit shaken up, but I guess let's move forward.
Yeah, so ilm al-badi is the science, right? And then under the umbrella of this science, you have other sciences and you have other doctrines or practices, right? So one of those doctrines, you have the ilm al-badi, the science of rhetoric, which is persuasion. But so ilm al-badi is the science of rhetoric and persuasion. Now, you know you've got the schools of fiqh, right? They say
Yes.
the schools of fiqh. Those are schools of jurisprudence. You'll often
Yes.
say you have the madhabs, okay?
Yeah.
You'll often say people will use fiqh and madhab interchangeably. Fiqh
Mhm.
means jurisprudence. Madhab does not mean jurisprudence. It means persuasion.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
schools of persuasion.
hmm
Madhab is a
Wow.
school of
Okay.
persuasion. It's the one who is the most eloquent, the most persuasive.
So even the madhabs are competing amongst each other in a way to be the most persuasive. Is that what's happening here?
Before that made it, they were.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, right. And then but they still managed to hold off and maintain the discrepancies within those four. Yeah. There wasn't like,
The discrepancies are considered a mercy from Allah because, for instance, what if you're born with one leg? You can't run as fast. You can't worship Allah as well, for argument's sake. So
Mhm.
what happens is that's why you've got rukhsa and azima. You have strict observance. If you're a strong guy and you're very good, you can worship Allah fully, completely, without error. You can follow all the rules. But if you aren't competent in that nature, you've got some kind of lack, one leg, no arms, then then what happens is that the differences, called the ikhtilaf, the differences allow you to violate these rules, not follow them, but still earn reward and still follow Islam to the letter. You're just
Right.
following rukhsa. So in other words, if Azima says stab people in the eye on London Bridge, and the rukhsa says lie to people, you both earn reward. The other guy just gets more reward.
I see. Okay. Right. Is that because, okay, no, that makes sense. Michael Fowler says, think this is a huge compliment where he says, David Wood is missing so much by not watching this. I feel like, yeah, if Lloyd could share this information on some level like that, and there's a kind of collab there, I think you guys would really be taking Islam down. Yeah, sorry. Let's carry on,
Yeah, you're
Lloyd.
welcome. No, thanks. Yeah. So hopefully this is. But any comments before I go on? Anything you want to add?
No, to be honest, I'm just trying to get my head around, as you're saying, like how deep and how like I thought deception came into it, later on in the game or whatever. But if you're telling me that this is built into its very foundations
It's
now,
fundamental. It's
it's
mandatory.
fundamental, and it makes sense. It makes sense when you think about when you're talking about lawful and not lawful, that's how Islam is set up, and then you're bringing in the madhabs, and it's just starting to make a lot more sense. But also, I'm just a bit shaken up by it is so dark at its very, very core that for people to go and claim and think and be duped into this being a spiritual, a way to live your life in a spiritual way, or be the best version of yourself. How could you ever be the best version of yourself and be just live life to the, like, even morally, when this whole thing is set up on deceiving, embellishing, in deceiving with intent? As you said, that is a crime. In 2022 in the West, that's a crime, yet this is what Islam is built on. It's as Josie Wales is saying, it's really opening my eyes, and it is a wonderful thing. Yeah. Even leaving Islam and finding out like the levels to which Lloyd has gone, and he, like, even in our chats off air, he was telling me like Islam is truly, truly dangerous. And I'm like, yeah, I completely hear that. But the extent to which it was dangerous in its very foundations, I did not know. So yeah, Allah knows best. Allah is the best deceiver, it turns out. But yeah, thank you. This is insanely illuminating for me. But yeah,
Thank you.
so we've got about 10 minutes left for today's session, Lloyd. So feel free to kind of like steer it and leave off, close
Okay,
off,
sure.
wherever you
No,
like.
look, I enjoy the conversation, and I want to be able to answer questions because I know I want to engage the audience as well and answer their questions. So I'm happy to go on a little bit further. Thank you, Free Somali
Sure.
Minds. Yeah, no, but thank you. I mean, you're a really good host. You ask really good questions, and I like it. It also gets me thinking. It also helps me to not just read, like a lecture.
Yeah,
I
I'm
want to show
glad. I
you
mean,
some.
I wish I could keep up with you historically, but honestly, this is just purely, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of this for the first time, and I'm just like, wow, I cannot be like more grateful that I've left.
So for instance, okay, this is very mild so far, but this is the laws on marriage. Okay,
Okay,
so so whether prepubescent or not, this girl must be married. Okay, this is in the Islamic law. So I'm going to go through just a handful,
sure.
just to a guardian may not marry his prepubescent son. He may not marry his
Daughter to someone.
prepubescent daughter to someone for less than the amount typically received as marriage payment by similar brides, nor marry his prepubescent son to a female for less money than you would normally get. So understand, prepubescent marriage is legal in Islam. But let's continue.
Definitely. Right? The Quran even sanctions it. Yeah.
Okay. So they speak here of the divorce of a wife who is prepubescent. Okay. The divorce of a wife who is prepubescent. And now the 65-4 within the Quran, where they argue about whether this means, a girl who's not had intercourse and all that, divorcing a wife, right? Just read this for me, please. Actually, just go down a little bit here. Okay, just read the second one, N9.2, if you would, please.
A waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse, whether the husband and wife are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one has and the other has not. Intercourse means copulation. This is also, guys and girls, whoever's not listening, this is exactly what Muhammad Hijab is referring to when he says that Quranists, relying on the Quran alone, it encourages mild pedophilia or extreme pedophilia, I think that was the word he used, because this is exactly what it says. You're able to divorce a prepubescent girl, meaning you're able to marry them. And it states there's no limits or age range in the Quran. It's only when you dive into exactly.
There is none.
There is none.
There is no lower age limit to having sex with a girl in Islam. There is none.
Yeah.
So understand. So divorced after intercourse, whether they are prepubescent or not, you may have sex. Now they speak of in another case. Actually, there's another case where a girl is accused of adultery, okay, but she's a child in the cradle. Okay, notice it says here, if he or she is prepubescent at the time of marital intercourse. They do speak of that. Sorry, there was another. I missed the other one, but
wow, that's actually
issue.
right. Yeah, sorry. This is, I mean, this page and by itself, Floyd, is enough. Like, you were literally talking about like raping a child here, marrying off a minor, having sex with a child. You're told what the waiting period is. I mean, I don't understand how anybody can be privy to this information and still say things like this. Islam is the only true religion, proud to be Muslim. Are you really, honestly, like Ali Dawa, proud of that? That you can marry and rape a child in Islam and they're telling you how to divorce them afterwards? Honestly.
Yeah. If you can, I know we're slightly off topic, but if you can read that for me. This is from another very popular. This book is still in use in Pakistan within the court system. This book is still in use today. Okay, these books are still in use. If you can read that for me, please.
Sure. When a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years and has ruptured the parts, it is unlawful for him to have further connection with her. But she is not released from her ties if connected with him by marriage or slavery. If no rupture has taken place, the prohibition is not incurred according to the most valid opinion.
If you don't destroy her vagina, they speak, I can go to another reference where you rip the skin between the bottom of the vagina and the anus and you rip that open. If that does not happen, you can continue having sex with this child.
Oh my word. Because yeah, I was going to mention something that just reminded me of, but I completely forgot. I'm sorry. I just can't believe what I just read. I had never seen it. Sorry. Yeah, what I was going to say is this rupturing the parts. And I think I was listening to a stream yesterday with Christian Prince, and he was talking about in heaven, they actually go as far as in the Islamic heaven to describe the sound that will be made, because these men will be like, they'll have the power of like however many men, and the whole point of these virgins or huris is that they will constantly become virgins over and over again. And the description in Islamic heaven of having intercourse with them is actually like onomatopoeia for a sound that will be heard, because these men will be having sex with these women so loudly, rupturing their vaginas, and they'll constantly be made virgins again for these men. So again, just the darkness of this ideology is so obvious. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The Super Awesome Films is saying, Lloyd, great work. And also there was a lovely comment here, and I think Super Awesome Films speaks for all of us. Oh, I can't find the comment, but Super Awesome Films was saying, us atheists are so happy to have you here, Lloyd. So we really do appreciate it.
Yeah. No, look, this, as I said, the book that I just showed you
No,
is
this
still
is
in use today in the
crazy.
Pakistani court system, for example. It is still a legally valid text today. Understand? This is what you're dealing
Yeah,
with. And so, shall I just finish this section and then we'll call it?
sure.
Let me just see where I am, if I may. Yeah, I'll probably just go a handful of slides further then if I can. I'm happy to go. Are you? Do you want to end, or would you want? You okay to go a little bit?
I'm happy to push it a little bit if you are. Yeah, sure.
I'm okay. So you tell me. All right, I'll go for a little bit. You let me know.
Yeah, sure. We
I just
can
want to,
go like 15 minutes over today if that works.
if you're okay, I just want to finish that. But
Sure.
hopefully hopefully this additional info I've shown you is helpful and illuminating.
Most definitely. Most
Thank you.
definitely. Yeah. Anyway, you can carry on, Lloyd, whenever
So
you're ready.
okay, so covenants is fundamental to the Old Testament. So in other words, Muslims always say, "Oh, but God said you must go kill that group over there called the McDonald's." Okay, well, the covenant within the Old Testament is, for instance, the McDonald's with diddling kids, like we just showed, and God gave them 400 years to stop doing it, and they didn't. And God said, "Okay, well, look, you guys don't want to stop. I've sent you prophet after prophet. I've asked nicely. Let's slaughter the lot of you." Right? This is disgusting. Personally, I would nuke them from orbit if that was me. Right? If people are
Yeah.
doing that, I would nuke them from orbit. I wouldn't think twice.
Yeah.
Right? So, whereas if you look at the Sharia, it's for all time. It is for all time. A covenant within the Bible is for a specific time, place, and person. So it passes. There were many covenants that have passed. The Sharia is the law for all time. There's a vast difference between those two. So the old covenants are no longer holding true. Many old covenants are defunct, right? But that's a more complex story, but fine. So we have a covenant with God. It involves rights and obligations, okay? So Abraham was a city dweller, okay? And he adopted a nomadic lifestyle. Abraham is referred to as a Hebrew, the Ivri, okay? Possibly because he was descended from Eber, or because he came from the other side of the Euphrates. So Abram is exalted father. Abraham is the father of a multitude, father of nations. So he was concerned he had no children. So his wife Sarai, who became Sarah, knew she was past childbearing years, and she offered her maidservant Hagar, apparently an Egyptian pharaoh's daughter or an Egyptian princess, right, as a wife to him. So this was a common practice in the time, and according to tradition, Hagar was a daughter of Pharaoh, right, given to Abram during his travels in Egypt. She bore him a son, Ishmael, who, according to Muslim and Jewish tradition, is the ancestor of the Arabs. Fine. When Abram was 100 and Sarah 90, God promises them a son, and he has a son, okay, Isaac, with Sarah, okay, in Hebrew, Yitzhak, a name derived from the word laughter, which is the joy over having a son. Isaac was the ancestor of the Jewish people, and Abraham died at 175. So now, Sharia, the Islamic law, makes explicit claim that Islam is Gnostic. Gnosticism is not a form of religion. It is a form of revision. It is revision. It is an alternate interpretation of reality. So Islam is revisionist. It alters biblical figures and events that stem from earlier traditions. The sources of Islam, and the sources of Islam, 99% of Islam's tales can be sourced to earlier myths, Gnostic tales from other cultures. That's easy to do.
True.
That's really easy to do.
Yeah.
All the sources are Gnostically derived, 99% of them, right? And they predate the Islamic stories by hundreds of years. So archaeological discoveries do validate the biblical narrative. This is not so with the Quran, right? Someone just asked me, that is Neil Bailey. Sorry, hold on. Someone just asked me this question about this book. The source for this is an Islamic legal text. Oh, bugger.
I'm just trying to find the question as well.
Well, no, he sent it to me privately. The Digest of Muhammadan Law by Neil Bailey. Okay, now, so archaeological discoveries do validate the biblical narrative. Okay, the Quran, there's no historical validity to it. Archaeology plays no part in it. You cannot find any of these places, and they've concreted over all of Mecca. So there's no way to find anything. For instance, they claim that there's a 90-foot, 36-meter tall skeleton of Adam buried next to the Kaaba. Well, show it to me and we'll have to believe you, right?
Yeah.
And of course, 300 prophets buried, perfectly preserved next to the Kaaba. Well, where are they? Abraham migrated from Mesopotamia to Haran. Okay, Haran is the name of Abraham's brother. He then goes to Israel, and in Babylon, they worship numerous gods. And in Haran, there was a moon god called Sin, among other names, also known as Al-Makkah. So this is the typical story. Although it seems that Abraham actually was born up here in Sandirfa, came down to Haran, and then this way. I think this section is wrong, but that's fine. Okay, that's the standard idea. So Abraham was 100, and he has his son, Isaac. Okay, so then you've got Ishmael, and Ishmael mocks Isaac, and Sarah doesn't like this. So she tells Abraham, take your other wife, take, Hagar and Ishmael, send them away. I don't like them mocking my son. Okay. He's very unhappy about it, but God says, look, it's fine. Okay. Just let them go. That's fine. Okay. So because your tribe will be founded in Isaac, you'll be fine. So he takes bread and a bottle of water, he gives it to Hagar, puts it on her shoulder and the child, and he sends her away, and she wanders in the wilderness of Beersheba. Okay, so she wanders in the wilderness of Beersheba. Oops. So let's go to Israel. So this here is Israel and the wilderness of Beersheba.
Lloyd, according to the Muslim narrative, you should be taking me to like Safa Marwa and Mecca right now, shouldn't you?
I know. So this is Beersheba, right here in Israel. Okay, so she wanders there according to the biblical story. Now, so the water was spent. Okay, and she cast the child under one of the bushes in the shade, and she went and sat down, and she said, let me not see the death of my child. And she sat over against him and cried. And God heard his voice, and the angel of God called to Hagar and said, what aileth thee? Blah, blah, blah. And she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave him drink. And God was with him, and he grew, and he dwelt in the wilderness, became an archer. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And then she took him a wife out of Egypt. Let's have a look. This is Beersheba here. This is this part of Israel here. Jerusalem is just at the top of this. You can't see it, but Jerusalem's just up here. Okay. So this is where she apparently wandered, in this part of, according to the Bible. Now, according to Islam, they claim she wandered in Mecca. Now, we know for a fact that Abraham started off in Israel, right? So Muslims claim that she made a 1,200-kilometer trek over uncharted desert.
Exactly. Okay. Unless she's flying on the Burak or something, I don't see that happening at all.
Well, we're going to talk about the Burak in just a minute, because Burak, unfortunately, so according to the Bible, she wandered between 43 and 70 kilometers. Okay, biblically, if you work it out, she would have wandered between 43 and 70 kilometers. I used Hebron because Hebron is where Abraham died. That's where he settled. Okay. So Beersheba is about 70 kilometers away, 43 miles. Okay, 43 kilometers, or so, 27 to 43 miles. That's how far she marched. In Hagar's 1,200-kilometer walk in Islam, okay, the well is Zamzam in Mecca. So Hagar and the infant Ishmael traveled 1,200 kilometers with one bottle of water on foot across arid, uninhabited, unexplored, harsh desert 1,000 years before it became a major trade route.
Yeah, and it would have been in some of the terrain that we discussed last week in the Rub al Khali, like the empty quarter type, harsh desert. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
with one
alone,
bottle of water. Yeah, exactly.
So in the standard Islamic narrative, Abraham walks with them there. That's the first story. He walks them there, then leaves them under a tree with some dates, some ajwa dates probably, and walks back to 1,200.
3 to be precise.
Then walks them back. So Allah is forgetful. Hagar is never mentioned by name. He doesn't know her name. Paran, according to Islam, is the Hejaz. So she searches for water between Safa and Marwa. Muslims tell us that Ishmael's heel touched the ground and opened up a well of water. Muslims also tell us the angel's heel touched the ground and opened up a well of water. Muslims also tell us that the angel's wing dug up the well. Very specifically. So in Quran 14:37, we have, our Lord, I've settled part of my descendants in a barren valley by your sacred house, the Kaaba, and that they may maintain the prayer. Okay, so that's where Abraham built this Kaaba. Fine and well. The problem is that this narrative is dated at the very earliest to 827 AD, 200 years after Muhammad died.
That's already, I mean, way, way, way too late. But also the story makes no sense in terms of the Islamic narrative or geographical location. And it's a complete rip-off of the biblical story. Also, I mean, going to do Umrah, like going to Mecca myself and like walking between these two mountains, it's, even today, like you can see parts of it and then parts they've like completely like
Covered over.
cornered off. And it just seemed like, even as like an 11, 12-year-old child, it just seemed really misleading to me, like walking between that and thinking there would be nothing here at that time. And these don't even
Safa,
look like,
Marwa.
yeah, that's it. And then in the middle there, when you're doing the pilgrimage, there's like green lights that they have which indicates where you should run and like speed up your walk, because that's exactly what Hagar did. Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, now you do it in air conditioning, I guess, so that's fine.
You do it in air conditioning, yeah. You could even be pushed on a wheelchair even if you're tired.
Yeah. So now you've got this story that was added to the Islamic narrative 200 years after Muhammad is supposed to have died. So this is obviously plagiarized and added in to give them legitimacy.
Yeah.
Right. So for instance, let's look at this. Ancient towns in Saudi Arabia from Wikipedia or Wakipedia. As everyone can, as all my critics will say, Wikipedia is my first and only source. Yes, guys, I'm using Wikipedia, so now you can call me a quack. So this is a Wikipedia article called Ancient Towns in Saudi Arabia. It does not list Mecca, nor does it list Medina. It does list the ancient, it does list the ancient Yemeni pagan town. Remember when the Kinda, the Yemenis, when they invaded Arabia, they controlled Arabia, this was their capital.
Right,
Qaryat
okay.
al-Fal. This is listed as an ancient town, one of 13 ancient archaeological towns, proven towns in Arabia. But Mecca, the mother of all cities, somehow doesn't make this list, nor does Medina.
Yeah,
very unusual.
Correct. Very unusual. Exactly.
Yeah. So Hagar walks 1,200 kilometers. So guys, we'll wind up in a moment. So Hagar walks 1,200 kilometers then to Egypt to get Ishmael a wife afterwards. Okay, so when he grows up, he walks 1,200.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ishmael, so Isaac and Ishmael buried him. So Abraham dies, they bury him, in Hebron, right? And of course, how does Ishmael get to the funeral? Okay, so when Abraham died in Hebron, Ishmael walked 1,200 k's for the funeral and back, presumably 1,000 years, before the caravan route. Ibn Kathir says, no. Abraham often rode upon the Burak to Mecca, coming suddenly to his son and then returning. God knows best.
Well, like I was honestly, Lloyd, thinking, how is the only way, according to Islamic minds, would you make sense of this distance at that time? And it would be the Barak. That is the best concept to lean on to make that claim even remotely plausible. Just stick the Barak in there and say he flew on that winged horse, come woman, come mule, come elephant, come.
Yeah, sorry. So let me just finish it. So Allah knows best. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go to this. This is the Aqidah. Now I'm using the Aqidah al-Tahawiyah. Fine and well, okay. But so I just want to show you, just like in Christianity, you've got the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, the Maker of heaven and earth. In Islam, you also have a creed, the Aqidah, which defines all of the statements of belief in Islam. Notice this one over here. Does this look familiar to you?
We say Allah knows best regarding matters, the knowledge of which is unclear to us.
This is part of the Islamic creed.
Yeah. The Lord knows best, right?
Yeah, this is actually the creed of Islam. This is actually baked in. This is one of your fundamental beliefs as a Muslim. You must accept
Where is this from again, Lloyd? Which source?
This specific one is the Aqidah al-Tahawiyah.
Okay. The creed of Imam al-Tahawiyah.
You get different one. You get the Aqidah of the Ash'ari and so on. But this one is, I've used this one.
Okay, brilliant.
But this statement is baked into Islam. If you don't know, Allah knows best.
Allah knows best.
When you're clueless, Allah knows best. When you're ignorant, Allah knows best.
That's also even, sorry. I was going to say that's also slapped in at any point that Islam has like these metaphysical existential questions as well. Like the Quran specifically says, like, don't ponder on matters of the soul, Allah knows best. And actually says, like, you as humans just are not, you don't have the capacity to comprehend that, basically. But yeah.
That's because it is illegal for a Muslim to engage in philosophy. It is unlawful. Unlawful knowledge includes, in the Sharia, learning sorcery and philosophy and magic and astrology. Notice philosophy is lumped in with magic, astrology, and sorcery.
Yeah, because I mean, I can see where you'd get magic and sorcery in terms of like the seven deadly sins, even, right? And how that could come through. But to lump in philosophy with that, because the second you start philosophizing, Allah, the Islamic Allah, falls to shreds. That's why they say don't even think too much in Islam, because as soon as you start critically thinking, you realize that Allah does not hold up once you ask those critical questions.
Correct. It
That's
falls apart. And unfortunately, look, there's more to it than that. There's also the moral rules which are aligned with this. That's a different section within this book, but it explains it. So there's more to that. But I just wanted to give you a brief indication. So let me finish a couple of slides. We call it a night. Thank you very
sure.
much for your time. If you need to go, you let me know. We can always pick this up
No,
again
no,
another
you
time.
round it up and then we'll bounce. No worries.
Okay. So in Ibn Ishaq's tradition about Abraham riding on the Burak to Mecca, where he visits Ishmael, this is found 3 times among the sources. So in other words, Ibn Ishaq in the Sirah talks about Abraham using the Burak to fly from Hebron to Mecca. That's how he gets this 2,400 journey in one day. Okay, 2,400 kilometers in one day. Abraham is accustomed
Lloyd,
to
sorry,
taking...
just for the Muslim viewers out there, if there are any, we are saying now the Burak is Muhammad riding on the Miraj, on the night of the Miraj, is not the first time the Burak has been used or mentioned Islamically. According to Ibn
originally
Ishaq.
associated with Abraham.
Okay, right. That's wild.
Correct. So when Muhammad was given the Burak, so Gabriel brings him the Burak. So Muhammad gets on the Burak, or tries to, and the Burak won't let him on his back. So the Burak starts bucking and refuses to behave. So Gabriel punches the Burak in the face,
Yeah.
and then it settles down, and Muhammad gets on its back.
Yeah, exactly. Punches
That's
the
what happened.
Burak in the face. Yeah, I know. There's the religion of peace just doing its thing again.
So Abraham is accustomed to taking day trips to Mecca in order to check up on Hagar and his son. Day trips. That's how he does 2,400 kilometers in one day. This is the story they had to come up with to explain how Abraham was in Mecca, but also in Hebron.
Yeah, exactly. The only way you could think about connecting these two is by a magical claim like the Burak to make it make sense. Yeah.
And then apparently it's not Isaac that goes for the sacrifice, it's Ishmael. Here they claim that he came to pick him up for the sacrifice, right? That was Ishmael, not Isaac. So it goes against the biblical narrative.
Okay.
This tradition provides no connection with the pilgrimage or building the Kaaba. So in the Sirah, there's no discussion of building the Kaaba nor the pilgrimage, just the sacrifice. Okay, so they forget that part. So somehow that doesn't exist in those records. And these records are 150, 200 years after the death of Muhammad. And the earliest datable mention, now notice this, the earliest datable mention of the Burak is by the poet Ajaj in a poem, and he died in 715. Again, roughly 90 years after Muhammad died. And he mentions it in connection with Abraham. It's a poem about Abraham.
Okay, that's interesting because again, I'm like honestly, as a lay Muslim, I never knew of a connection between Abraham and the Burak. I exclusively thought the Burak was a one-time thing that night for the Miraj, which was also to like, you know, prove this. Well, obviously show Muhammad heaven and hell, but also prove that God is capable of all things. I had no idea that the Burak could be rented out thousands of years before for Abraham to take day trips.
Correct.
But it's also really interesting in where you said that there's no connection of the building of the Kaaba, because even in the Quran we see the verse where it just alludes to Abraham established a place of prayer or worship. And so we follow that example, but there's nothing beyond that said in that context.
Yeah, it's very, very vague. So they've taken, remember, the story of Abraham comes 200 years after Muhammad. And this story, you know, these details on Abraham comes 200 years after the death of Mo. And then you've got this story of the Burak is associated with Abraham. And again, it's 715, which is well after the death of Mo.
It's literally like using like filler, you know, to just whatever holes are there, just kind of like seal them over and shut them off.
And it's by a poet. It's not by a theologian. It's by a poet who was telling us a story.
Exactly.
Once upon a time, there was a Burak. Let's finish this one. So I'll finish this slide and done. So Mo is having a read here on the Burak. Burak means lightning. So also called Al-Borak, Borak, many other names. It was a mule, elephant, angel, camel, woman, peacock, horse.
That is great. Hold on, I just want to see the depiction for a second of, yeah, it's got
And
the face
someone
of
made
a
a very
woman.
funny comment
Wasn't
here. It's
it
like,
white
this would have
though?
made headlines. Sorry?
Sorry, Lloyd, wasn't it meant to be pure white, the Barak, or am I wrong? Because this depiction is a black horse.
It's meant to be the perfect colors, the perfect color.
Oh,
That is
okay.
because the star Sirius used to be the star of the perfect colors.
Oh, okay.
We'll
Very
get into all of
interesting.
that.
Sure.
But,
What were you saying?
oh man, there was someone who made a very funny comment. Like, this is like very funny. He said it's like man punches horse in the face or man punches donkey in the face, creates new religion. It's like, how did this religion start? Well, an angel punched the donkey in the face.
That's true.
So guys, I'll finish here. So this is a mule, elephant, camel.
If anyone runs the Barak.
Yeah, that's too funny. But so the conveyance of Mo from Mecca to Al-Aqsa and to the skies is by means of the ladder. Okay, the Sulam. Notice SLM. You got again the Sulam.
Oh
SLM, the
yes,
same root.
yes. To the skies by means of March.
He's also stated in narrations.
Okay.
And then sometimes in other narrations, he is on the wings of Gabriel. So there's a bit of a confusion there. Most of these narrations from Mo himself state he descended from Burak, okay, prayed in the mosque, then went to the skies with Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel himself, maybe with two other angels, brought Burak on the night of Isra. When Mo mounted, it was disobedient, but Gabriel hit it in the face. So Burak will carry Mo.
Because she had a woman's face, isn't it? That's why.
Exactly. You punched the woman in the face.
Yeah. It's always
Burak
violent.
transports other prophets as well. Ibrahim, when he wanted to carry Hajar and Ismail to Mecca, she didn't walk. They went on the Burak. Somehow that story suddenly comes up, which contradicts the older stories where they walked. Okay.
Yeah.
Some narration said it was his conveyance on all his travel to Mecca. The descriptions are conflicting. Okay. So apparently when it went upwards, the hands became smaller than its feet. And when it came down, the feet got smaller than the hands, whatever.
Just trying to explain like propulsion and descent, but it's like, why are you even trying?
So as the feet become smaller and the hands bigger and vice versa, it keeps you on its back.
Right.
Fine. Okay, great stuff. So it has a skin with the best color among all the animals. Its face was similar to humans and it could hear and understand like a human. So that's the story. Shall I pause here and then we call it? We can do another. We can schedule another story, and I'll just leave it here and we'll explain more about the Buddha.
Sure. Also, I do see the reference here with a white skin. Sorry.
From the Talmud. Sorry.
I was just saying, I saw the reference finally. I knew there was some white obsession with it. With a white skin is somewhere here in the last like third line. It is described as a huge mount with furry. And even here, Duldul is Muhammad's white mule. So there's always a huge mount with furry mane and with a white skin. It has a skin with the best color amongst all the animals. Wow.
So which one, white or the best color?
Well, the huge mount with the furry mane and with a white skin. It has a skin with these, yeah. So I knew there was a reference somewhere. I knew they couldn't just say the best of all colors without adding the word white in there somewhere. I was just making sure my Islamic thing wasn't off. But yeah, awesome.
So if you want to go through the questions in the chat just to get those, and then
sure. Yeah, thank you guys. We've got loads of funny comments coming through. I can't I don't want to derail us too much because we will start just going into pure comedy. But yeah, definitely, Ray. When I first heard of the Barak, I definitely thought of Pegasus in my mind. But yeah, okay, guys. I don't know. I haven't been keeping an eye on the chat, but if you have any questions, now is the time, because then we will be wrapping it up very soon. We have gone a couple of minutes over, so I do appreciate Lloyd sticking around. Allied Atheist Alliance was asking you if your opinion on the Dan Gibson documentary suggesting Petra was the original Mecca, and it really ties into your theories in case you haven't seen it before, which I know you have. So yeah, your thoughts, Lloyd?
I am familiar with it. I've watched all of his shows. I've watched all of his interviews. There is relevance to Mecca. Like Alat, Manat, and Al-Uzza, the three cranes, from the satanic verses. Muhammad worshipped those gods. It's in the Islamic literature. We covered it last week. Muhammad actually had a son named after Al-Uzza, right? He had a son named Abd al-Uzza, or the slave of Al-Uzza. He and his wife Khadija worshipped Al-Uzza. They prayed to them at night before bedtime. But also just like Petra fitted the theory because obviously it had rivers and waters and agriculture, but also dates and olives. Yemen fits that as well. Yemen also fits the template, and Yemen obviously has temples to Makkah, right? The earliest Qurans came from Yemen. The earliest Arabic script is Yemeni. The earliest Quranic script is Yemeni Arabic, right? And we've got all of these ties to Makkah, which is all Yemeni. Yemen fits the geography as well as Petra.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's why I think this information is just such a good like it kind of paints that full picture, whereas Petra makes a lot of sense and gives you like strong indications of what's happening. But if you build on that with this kind of this Yemeni side of things and that influence, then it makes sense in terms of Islam as a whole, where it's kind of getting its influences from and where it's kind of picking up momentum and steam. So I think the two theories, personally speaking, I think they work very, very well hand in hand, but that's just my opinion. Who painted this? This is clearly haram. I thought the same thing, to be honest, when I see it or see descriptions, but even a depiction, sorry, but even in Islamic art, there are books which show the Prophet in various settings from like even the Mughal times in India. There's a couple of illustrations of the Prophet. So for some purposes, it is allowed. I was more worried about the color of the Barak here because I always assumed it was talked about in this pure white thing that Islam has an obsession with. That painting will be Eastern or Western. Yeah. Do you know the reference of this painting, Lloyd, by any chance?
It's probably Persian.
Okay.
I
Yeah. Most
wasn't thinking about
likely.
it. It's probably Persian. It was very common up until I think even the 15th century for there to be paintings, pictures, drawings of Muhammad. Over time, though, he starts to wear a veil on his face, and then eventually it gets banned. So, adult human female, thank you, thank you, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So it's
Thank
only much
you.
later in Islamic history that they ban images of Muhammad.
Yeah. I agree. And then they switch to only calligraphy and like that kind of art because they deem it all haram. Josie Wales again is just saying, brilliant, Lloyd and Noria, entertaining and knowledgeable in parts, very horrible young girls. Yeah, exactly. And to be honest, like I pull out the dirt on Islam from the Quran and the Sunnah and bits of the Sirah, but where Lloyd is picking out this information on these exact rulings and rules for if you've ruptured their vaginas or not, like this is a whole nother level of darkness being unearthed. So I know we did veer off topic, Lloyd, but I genuinely think you might have opened a lot of people's eyes with that, and that's not information a lot of us are privy to or even know what to search. So thank you so much. I'm just gonna have a quick look if there's any other questions here. This was a seriously interesting presentation. Thank you both so much. Yeah, thank you everyone who stuck around. Somebody did say they've never watched a full 2-hour presentation, but they refused to go to bed because this is so interesting. So thank you. So there's one question. I'm not sure if you can shed any light on this, Lloyd, and if you can't, that's okay. What was the religion in Mecca before Islam? Did it have anything to do with Hinduism, which was a major pagan like religion in the region?
Um,
Do you have any thoughts
I
on
will
that?
say okay, so the religion in Mecca was paganism. You're looking at so the Nabatean religion was in Mecca, which is the worship of Alat, Manat, and Al Uzza. So the Nabatean religion was there. Those are those three gods. Um, Al Uzza might be the female version of Hubal. There's a possibility that
Okay.
Alat may be the female version of Hubal because the origin story of Alat arriving in Mecca and Hubal arriving in Mecca, both from Syria, are very similar. So there could be some confusion, but they are pagan gods. These are the pagan gods of Nabatea. And then I will agree with you. Yes, if you look at Islam and Hinduism, they are very strong parallels. I have seen it. I just don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth to get into that. But what I have seen does show me that yes, they do seem to be strong parallels. The Yemenis who conquered that part of the world did extensive trade with India. The Ethiopians who conquered that part of the world and influenced it also did extensive trade with India. So those ideas, and we provided the evidence to show that religion spread through mercantile networks through trade. So yes, there are definitely strong parallels. I just don't know very much about it, and I don't have the time to dig into it. I'm so busy with other things.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Lloyd. Lloyd, guess who's here? Our very own.
Safraz
Surprise
Hussein, yeah,
Hussein is here as well. He just couldn't stay away.
4,000 years ago. Not even according to Muhammad is it 4,000 years ago, but we'll get into that. I mean, this
Yeah.
guy is like, you know,
Well, I just want to tell people who are watching, because Lloyd definitely doesn't need to entertain this. Lloyd and Adam Seeker took Safraz Hussain on a live show because apparently he's an expert on, what was it, Lloyd? He said the Old
the Old
Testament,
Testament.
and
Well, he
yeah.
first challenged me on the Sharia, on Islamic law. He said he wants to come up and debate me on Adam's channel on Sharia law. So we brought him on, and then he said, "Well, I don't know anything about Sharia law. Actually, I don't know anything. I'm an expert on the Old Testament." And he got smashed on the Old Testament as well.
Yeah, he brought up the Gospels of
Look, I will
Barnabas or
say
something.
I will say it is illegal for Muslims to talk about the Sharia. It is absolutely, totally illegal. They cannot, absolutely, positively cannot reveal the Sharia to you. It's illegal. It's a secret. They cannot do it. There is no way he can do it. There's no Muslim who can come up and chat to him about Sharia law. It's not legal. So just, sorry, on to you again. Thanks.
No, but also I don't even think Safraz Hussain, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think you know the what we called, Lloyd, the lowest level of us Muslims. I forgot the
Ibara,
Ibara.
Ishara,
I
wa
don't think you even know Sharia according to what's the death penalty for what's the penalty for apostates, Safraz? Do you know what Sharia prescribes for them? Because I've seen your posts and you live in a very woo-woo version of Islam that you've created for yourself. Which you think is all peace loving. And even Lloyd has responded to you with hadiths that completely counter what you're saying in the comments. But thank you for stopping by anyway, Safraz. I hope you learned something today.
I don't
Unless
take
you're
him seriously. So my answers are, many of them are just very unserious. I'm like,
yeah, no, don't waste your breath, Lloyd. Trevor Griffiths saying, Lloyd and Nuria, I hope you do more of these. Please don't stop. This is fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. If anyone has a question, you've got like 30 seconds, but otherwise, I will let Lloyd go. We've taken a lot of his time. Allied Atheist Alliance is saying Safraz really wants those 72 virgins. Oh, Safraz, you really don't want to stay in this cult even for a ward like that, no matter how nice that might sound. But yeah, basically, I think that's the problem. Islam is getting busted, and that's what's really, really irking you. But you're on the wrong channel. If you don't like what we're saying, just leave. Thank you so much, Music Guy. Guys, I hope everything was okay in the chat today. Sorry I couldn't be on top of it the entire time. I'm also trying to absorb all the information that Lloyd is throwing our way because I want to be able to like pick up on things and have the, just the lay woman's interpretation on it and ask those basic questions just so other Muslims who would have thought like me can also just, connect the dots. But yeah, I think today we learned a lot. I think this was an awesome part 2, Lloyd. I think we're moving at a good pace. What do you think?
yeah, it's hopefully not too fast. And everyone seems to be keeping up. So yeah, it looks fantastic. And thank you all for the positive comments, the support, and thank you for being here. And the questions. I really enjoyed the interaction and the questions. And thank you again, Nuria. You're a great host.
No worries at all. Thank you. And hats off to my mods today. If there was any issue with the chat, please just feel free to email me separately. But I really appreciate that you guys understand that, we're here to talk about a specific topic and conversation should remain on that topic. And no one's here to challenge anyone's personal worldviews that's off topic in this format. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that. And Lloyd, I hope you got a better reception this time and I hope it continues to be this way. So thank you so much, guys, everyone, for your love and for making Lloyd feel so welcome and for really, really respecting his time, his work, his effort, his knowledge, and for all your questions. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
I guess until next time, take it easy. Bye. Thank you, Lloyd, again.
Take care, guys. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.